Good afternoon, and thank you for attending this meeting of the Council. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. I welcome members of the press and public who may be viewing this meeting remotely. I'd also like to welcome some journalism students who are with us today from the University of Sunderland, and I hope you find these proceedings interesting. We now move into the formal business of the meeting. Can we take the notice convening the meeting as read? Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have apologies from councillors Eyre, Graham King, Laws, McDonough, D Snowden, D E Snowden, D Truman, M Walker and Wood, and also Honorary Alderman Forbes and Tate.
Thank you. Are there any further apologies?
Thank you. Niall Hodson is running late.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Councillor George Smith phoned me just before the council meeting to say that his wife's getting out of hospital, so he can't be here today. So could we note his apologies, please?
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Sean Laws.
Councillor Spedding.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, on unrelated business, could you please turn down that blind? Because it's blinding, like the sun's like in my eye.
Yeah,
Thank you. I know it's not welfare cuts, but...
Unfortunately, the blind is broke, so they're unable to take it down. So what we can look at is seeing if there's anywhere else where we can reseat you. Do you want to go behind on the edge? Council, please, one meeting. Thank you. Thank you. The next item is the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 19th of February 2025. I understand that Councillor Edgeworth wishes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a query on the accuracy of the minutes, which obviously report that no member of the Liberal Democrat group voted against the budget amendment proposed by the Conservatives. So if that is true, would it be the case that anyone who published statements online or in literature saying that Lib Dems did vote against the Conservative amendment would be lying?
Madam Mayor, through you, we've checked the voting records. As far as we're aware, the minutes are accurate.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last council meeting, Michael Mordy made a statement that people will be better off after this Labour government. Does he like to retract that, given the fact that you're cruel?
Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Brien, it's about the accuracy of the minutes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
he said it in the meeting.
Can we agree the minutes?
Disagree.
Do any members have any interests to declare?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got an interest in the university motion, should we get that far.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got an interest in page 24, the Waspi motion. I am a Waspi woman. Thank you.
Okay. The Council was saddened to learn of the death of the former councillor Tom Martin. Tom represented the Hendon ward on the Council from 2002 to 2015, during which time he served on a number of committees, including licensing and development control, and he was vice chair of a number of scrutiny committees. Tom also served as a board member of the Tyne and Wear Development Company and the Rach Carter Sports Centre. Tom was Mayor of Sunderland in 2010 to 2011. and was well known for his devotion to the Hendon ward and its residents. Can I now ask that we observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect to our former colleague, Tom Martin. Now I understand that the Council has received an award. Councillor Alison Smith, do you have something to present to Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am absolutely delighted to present this award to you this evening. Sunderland City Council's Smart City Programme team was honoured to take home the People's Choice Award at the Digital Leaders Award in 2025, amidst a strong field of 36 leading smart city projects across the UK. The People's Choice Award is part of the Digital Leaders Impact Awards, which celebrate digital innovations that make a positive impact on people's lives and the world around us. The public is invited to celebrate digital leaders and their work by voting for their favourite project from a short list of nominees, all showcasing pioneer projects that leverage digital technology to support communities and create meaningful change. And I'm sure you have all been party to the digital hubs that have been rolled out by the team across the city and earned us this People's Award. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. That concludes my announcements. I'd like to thank those members who have given notice of their wish to speak. If any member who hasn't given prior notice wishes to speak at any point during the meeting, they should please raise their hands to indicate. We now move on to the Leader's update. Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of things to update Council on this month. Members will recall we held a very successful Cohesion Stakeholder Summit in this very room a few weeks back. It's a part of this work is about building on ongoing engagement activities. Around 80 people from a range of different groups, organisations and agencies met here in City Hall. There were presentations from Northumbria Police about their investigation and approach to the last summer's riots and survey work they have carried out. And from the Belong Network, they expect the independent organisations supporting us about their work to date alongside the Council and other partners, so as we develop a shared understanding and a sense of the issues which were highlighted by the disorder. The conversations were honest, Madam Mayor, and inspiring, with people from across the city sharing their experiences and the ideas for the future. And I'm confident now more than ever we will continue working together towards achieving our city plan vision of a connected international city with opportunities for all. I would just like to add, Madam Mayor, it is just the start of this conversation. We will be carrying on with the work. I want to thank all members who participated in the event on the day, all the partner agencies. We will be looking to hold a second event, we think, sometime later in the year, around May, June time. But this is just the start of an honest conversation about how we come together as a city to respond to the events of last August. So I hope once we get that one city approach, we can share the proposed strategy with scrutiny with the wider council and with the city to get their input on that. Moving on, Madam Mayor, we saw the first new metro train run to Sunderland. It ran on the Green Line recently. Obviously, members will recall that the fleet has been rolled out in periods. We had a slight delay in running it to Sunderland because of the difference in ownership of the track. We had to work more closely with Network Rail. So that was really interesting. I'm really pleased to see that the first train, I was able to ride the first train from South Hilton back to Park Lane and to interact and talk to a few of the passengers who were there. They were all very excited to see the new trains, and hopefully by the end of 2025 we'll see half of the new trains in service. Madam Mayor, other things to touch on. Members will recall that the children's services have been recently rated as outstanding. That's excellent news and shows the commitment of the council and partners to providing the best possible services to our children and families in Sunderland. Other things just to touch on briefly, I was delighted to be at the Port of Sunderland recently as we welcomed Wastefront to the city, a significant investment into the port estate that's enabling us to move through our circular economy with an investment into producing sustainable aviation fuel for the industry. It was really inspiring, Madam Mayor, to be at Culture House last week with a number of Year 9 pupils from South Mower School. This is all part of Kia in the open door, Kia Construction, the open door policy about showing the benefits of jobs in the construction industry and being able to show firsthand how some of our flagship regeneration programs in the city are coming on. And the kids asked really insightful questions, and it was a pleasure to be a part of that visit. Looking ahead, we are due to announce soon a big programme of events to mark VE Day in the city. So I'd ask colleagues to look out for that as we move forward. And then finally, Madam Mayor, just a short update this month. I just want to touch on my visit recently to MIPIM, which is held in France. I was able to meet and discuss possible investments in Sunderland with, among others, Place First, OVG Group, Legal and General, Capital and Centric, Igloo and Places for People. The visit gave me the chance to stand alongside other regional leaders in showcasing strategic investment opportunities in the city and the wider North East region to leading national and international real estate investors and developers. I was also able to hear how other leading international cities were delivering their development and regeneration programme and how some of the initiatives could be applied to Sunderland. Meetings were held with current and prospective investment partners, and we hope to make future announcements in due course regarding the real estate investments that those meetings in MIPIM have provided. So it was worthwhile going. Again, if you're not in the room, the leaders of Newcastle and Gateshead were there. We need to be in these conversations. I absolutely believe it's the job of the leader of the council to be in these rooms because the regeneration we've seen in Sunderland hasn't happened by chance. You absolutely have to go out, secure the investment, and as we're about halfway through the regeneration of Riverside, it's important that we're having important discussions about how we carry forward the significant investment that this Labour group over a number of years have delivered for Sunderland. So that's my update this month, Madam Mayor. Just 5 minutes, and I'm happy to answer the opposition leaders' questions. Thank you.
Councillor Edgeworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just put on record my thoughts to Tommy Martin's family when I was young, about 18 or 19, and it must have been that age because it can't have been any younger. I used to drink in the Victoria Gardens in Hendon, and Tommy was often in there, and I've enjoyed many good nights on the drink with him. So I'm thinking of his family and friends at the moment. The Yes Man leader referenced steps towards economic growth in Sunderland, including the very welcome port developments. Does he think that it's morally right in this new Labour age of austerity to cut support to the sick and disabled in Sunderland instead of properly taxing non-DOMs, the global online giants, and restoring the banking levy to its former levels? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Again, we had rules of procedure. That wasn't referenced in my report, so I'll not answer it. Thank you very much.
Classic. Too weak to answer the question, as expected. He also mentioned the new metro. Is the Yes Man leader going to roll over to his North East Labour bosses and agree to allocating regional money to demolishing the Gateshead flyover and fixing the Tyne Bridge if the government doesn't come forward with that money, even if that means that Sunderland's going to lose out on funding for our own transport improvements?
Again, Madam Mayor, wasn't covered in the report. He's taken advantage of a report.
Weak and feeble.
Thank you. Can I just ask members as well, not bang on the desks if you can? There's people with hearing aids in, it's affecting people's hearing. Thank you. Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got two questions on subjects which were covered in his report. Firstly, relating to investment in the city centre, he will be aware that Sharon Appleby has criticised the government's national insurance increase in this quarter's Sunderland bid newsletter. Given that this is now coupled with halved growth forecast, reduced business confidence and increased borrowing, and assuming that he is re-elected leader of his group at their AGM this year, unless, of course, that's another cancelled election, what will he do to ensure that there are more businesses and more jobs in Sunderland city centre over the next municipal year?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, we've got clear plans. The Riverside Sunderland strategy aims to double the number of people working in the city centre and aims to double the number of people living in the city centre. We've been very, very successful as a council in attracting investment to the city. There isn't any reason why that will not continue. As I say, we were recently in Mipham speaking to these investors. It was really interesting to be pulled to one side, to have investors talking here, seeing absolutely amazing things happening in Sunderland. We want to get here, we want to partner with you, we want to invest. So I'm absolutely confident as we move forward in the next civic year, we'll see significant further investment coming into Sunderland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And then returning to his comments on the cohesion strategy, he'll recall that one of the drivers of the riots last year mentioned was people feeling economically under-resourced. He will remember also that the Labour group that he now leads brought a motion to council a couple of years ago condemning the universal credit system, calling for it to be scrapped and replaced with a more humane system, in their words. Not only has Labour kept that system in government, but they have cut the benefits of the claimants from that system. The government's own economic impact assessment published today has concluded that the number of children in poverty will increase by 50,000, the number of adults will increase by 200,000. Is he concerned that this will make the problem worse, and will it undermine his cohesion strategy?
Madam Mayor, I haven't actually seen any of the Chancellor's statement today, but what I did watch was the Department of Work and Pension Secretary's statement announcing the first phase of it. So I will look seriously at what the Chancellor has announced today. There's a clear indication from the party that the cost of the current benefit system is unsustainable. It's projected to get to £70 billion. How that's brought down and in more control absolutely is a fundamental concern to me and the wider Labour Party. We absolutely, the Work and Pension Secretary says that the most vulnerable, those who can't work, will absolutely be protected. But what we do, the names on our name, it's the Labour, we believe getting people back into work is the best thing for them, for the country. But on the issue of cohesion and the impact in communities, absolutely it was a factor in what we've seen last summer. It was a factor because we've suffered 14 years of Tory austerity that have seen the hearts of some of our communities ripped out. We, as a Labour group, are absolutely looking to address that through our recent budget, looking at rolling out community hubs in each of areas of the city. So absolutely, it is a concern. As I say, I haven't had a chance to see what the Chancellor has said in the statement to the comments today. I will have a look at it and I will study it carefully. Thanks very much, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I have agreed the order of the next two motions. First of all, it was meant to be the child grooming motion, but I've actually spoken to the leader of the Conservative Party. We are going to deal with the notice of motion, which is titled Women Against State Pension Inequality First. I now call upon Councillor Fagan to read and move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Notice of motion, Women Against State Pension Inequality. Council notes that in March 2023, councillors from all political parties supported a motion acknowledging the gross injustice suffered by a woman born in the 1950s and calling for a swift resolution to the ongoing injustice of women affected by state pension inequality, including through compensation payments. The Council further notes that the Primary and Health Service Ombudsman report of March 2024 on communication of changes to women's pensions concluded that compensation between £1,000 and £2,950 should be awarded to those affected by maladministration between 2005 and 2007. Council regrets the decision by the Labour government to turn its back on millions of pension-aid women who were wronged through no fault of their own by refusing to agree to recommend compensation. Council also notes that this decision has been branded as an unprecedented political choice to ignore the clear recommendations of an independent watchdog by the chair of the Waspi campaign group. The Council believes that the Labour government decision to not award this compensation is a betrayal of Waspi women, and that the dire effect inheritance from the previous Conservative government is no excuse for not doing the right thing, and that the government ministers picking and choosing an ombudsman's findings in the way that the Secretary of State for Work Pensions has done in this instance undermines the position of an ombudsman as an independent complaint handler and resolver of grievance. This council further believes that women affected in Sunderland will not forgive councillors if they choose to lend Waspi women their support in March 2023, but fail to do so now just because it's politically inconvenient for the Labour government. Council therefore resolves to request the leaders of each political group to jointly write to the Secretary of State and Pensions, the local MPs representing constituencies covering the Sunderland City Council area, to express Council's deep dissatisfaction at the position of the Labour government have taken and ask them to commit to proper compensation. I propose a motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Potts, do you second the motion?
I second the motion and would like to speak after Heather, please.
Councillor Fagan, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't go back over the original injustice that the Waspi women have endured, as I think we are all fully aware of what happened and the difficult position it has left many of them in. The personal story of those women are indeed varied, but they all share a common struggle with the system that failed them and let them down. I will start from March 2023 in this very chamber, a motion put forward by the Labour group to show their support of the Waspi women and to call for justice on their behalf. Labour councillors such as Sean Laws spoke of how women have had their emotional, physical and mental circumstances obliterated and accused the government of choosing to wait before taking action. Alison Chisnell urged the government to take action and to not allow another woman, mother, gran or somebody's aunt to pass away without them receiving the compensation they so rightly deserve. Susan Watson simply described it as a travesty and that it needed to be sorted now. The motion was passed unanimously and supported by all parties. Then we look at what has happened on the 17th of December 2024. The media have labelled this as a day of shame. This new Labour government chose to turn their backs on the Waspi women who had all pledged their support just a few months earlier. Keir Starmer stated that the taxpayers simply can't afford the burden of compensation. Burden, that's how he labelled it. What a terrible way to describe the injustice of the Waspi women. Discussing this with Christine, one of the local Waspi campaigners who's in the chamber tonight, she said, and I thought it was worth quoting, compensation and justice should never be dependent upon the public purse, and I totally agree with that. When compensation is due and an ombudsman is ruled as such, the government must honour this and pay up. Labour politicians stood with the Waspi women and their pledge boards, promised justice if they should get into government, and now they have gone back on this promise, and it's absolutely shameful. Hot on the heels of taking away the winter fuel payments from millions of pensioners, many of whom are Waspi women, this further betrayal by the Labour government is unforgivable. The images of cabinet members smiling alongside the women while they campaigned for support likely gave many of the campaigners hope that they would finally receive justice. To see those same politicians now actively distancing themselves from the issue or rejecting the idea of compensation is complete betrayal. This shift in policy is particularly poignant because the Waspi women have been through a long, drawn-out fight and many have seen Labour as allies in their struggle. The admission from the government that mistakes were made, yet there will be no redress, adds another layer of frustration and disillusionment for those affected. It's one thing for a government to acknowledge that errors took place, but then to refuse to provide any form of compensation feels like a double blow. For the Waspi women, many of whom have already struggled for years to make ends meet, this admission without action only deepens the sense of injustice. The fact that this government has inherited an awful state of an economy is no excuse, The fact that these women are actually being hit by the mistakes of the Tories and the new Labour government are using that as a shield is utterly unforgivable. The government has a responsibility to act with integrity, to fix the wrongs that have been done and to ensure that those who have suffered the most are not left to bear the consequences of decisions made far beyond their control. It's deeply concerning that this matter was referred to the Ombudsman and the government chose to selectively disregard and cherry-pick aspects of the findings. The Ombudsman's role is to provide an independent, objective review and make recommendations based on the facts. If MPs believe in fairness and accountability, they should be supporting the findings of the Ombudsman without hesitation and give the Waspi women the compensation they are owed. What the Waspi women have faced is a grave injustice, and it's heartbreaking that they are now being asked to bear the cost of economic mismanagement that there was no fault of their own. This motion is urging councillors who previously pledged their support to stay true to their word and fight for justice for the Waspi women. It's no good posing for photos, offering your support now and offering to support, but now back down because Keir Starmer said no. Standing up for what is right and fair is vital, even if it's not the party line. Don't become a Keir yes man or woman. Put your head above the parapet and give the Waspi women your support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Potts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As everyone who was in this room on the 22nd of March 2023 knows, the Waspi motion's approval was met with applause from campaigners present at the meeting, reflecting the Council's commitment to addressing this significant injustice. As Heather said, this has been quickly forgotten by Labour, some of whom have abandoned the campaigners. Some of you may be getting encouragement from Labour HQ to turn your backs on this campaign, but plenty of Labour MPs and unions have not. As reported by the Evening Chronicle on the 18th of December 2024, Blythe and Ashington's MP Ian Lavery has urged the Labour Party to reconsider the move. He said, having worked closely with the Waspi women over the years, I'm very disappointed with today's announcement. I do not believe that cherry-picking recommendations from the Ombudsman's report is at all helpful. I'll be continuing my dialogue with the women involved and join them as they continue to fight for justice for those affected. The announcement today is quite frankly unacceptable. I will continue to fight for justice for all of the women involved in this. One of the other local Labour MPs, Emma Llewellyn-Buck, has also continued to support the Waspi women and spoke in Westminster Hall on the 15th of January this year, emphasising her support for the campaign remains steadfast. There's also John McDonnell, who said this issue and the campaign isn't going to go away. And in January, every single MSP in the Holyrood chamber called for the Labour Party to reconsider its decision not to compensate women born in the 50s, affected by changes to the state pension age. And then, less than a week ago, the leaders of Unison, GMB, the Communication Workers Union, TSSA and the Fire Brigades Union said the decision will make many question the point of an ombudsman. They wrote, by disregarding its report, the government has established a dangerous precedent that suggests official checks and balances on ministers can be ignored, eroding public trust in our democratic institutions. And what about those people we all know have been affected, including some in this room? How can we look them in the eye if you don't support the motion? I urge you to do the right thing and vote for this motion.
Thank you. I understand that Councillor Alison Smith wishes to move an amendment. Can I ask you to read that?
Thank you very much. I would propose an amendment to this motion as follows. Insert as the first sentence of the first paragraph. This motion reaffirms Sunderland City Council's commitment to stand in solidarity with the 1950s-born women in their fight for justice. Council notes that in September 2016 and in March 2023, councillors from all political parties supported a motion acknowledging the gross injustice suffered by women born in the 1950s and calling for swift resolution to the ongoing injustice of women affected by the state pension inequality, including through compensation payments. Delete the second paragraph, beginning with council further notes and ending with between 2005 and 2007, and replace with Council notes The state pension age for women rose from 60 to 65 under the 1995 Pensions Act, with a further increase to 66. Sorry, the trouble with the microphone there, my apologies. With a further increase to 66 under the Coalition's 2011 Pension Act. The accelerated timescale in the Pension Act 2011 impacted on many women, and at the time this was being debated in Parliament, ministers in the then Conservative Liberal Democratic government refused to introduce fair transitional arrangements to protect women born in the 1950s. The Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman has found the Department for Work and Pensions guilty of maladministration because these changes were not adequately communicated to all women born in the 1950s. The all-party parliamentary group on state pension inequality for women concluded that the maladministration had a significant impact on those that were affected. Despite the Ombudsman's findings, the previous government did not act on the recommendations. Delete the third paragraph, beginning with Council regrets and ending with Waspi campaign group, and replace with Council recognises on the 4th of July 2024 the new Labour government inherited a woeful and unprecedented financial situation as a result of both the Liberal Democrats and Conservatives' dire mismanagement of the economy over the previous 14 years. That the recklessness of the previous government has placed immeasurable pressure on this government's ability to tackle long-standing injustices like those encountered by women born in the 1950s, whilst also dealing with wider fiscal challenges facing the nation. That despite the significant challenges and constraints, there is still a moral case to address the injustice and seek a fair and proportionate resolution. Delete the fourth paragraph, including bullet points beginning with Council believes and ending with resolver of grievance, and the fifth paragraph beginning with Council further believes and ending with convenient for the Labour government, and replace with Council supports the findings of the APPG on state pension inequality that highlighted the injustices faced by some women born in the 1950s. The government giving further consideration to how the estimated 10% of 1950s born women that were affected by this could in the first instance be identified and thereafter offered appropriate compensation, acknowledging the financial constraints facing the nation, but also recognising the need for justice. In the sixth paragraph, after Council therefore resolves to delete the remaining paragraph and bullet point and replace with write to the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions and the Chancellor of the Exchequer and urge them to recognise the impact that this injustice has had on some women, their families across Sunderland, Washington and the coalfields, explore a fair and affordable resolution in line with the PHSO's recommendations, maintain their commitment for robust communication if there are any changes to state pension ages in the future. So with that amendment, Madam Mayor, the motion would read: this motion reaffirms Sunderland City Council's commitment to stand in solidarity with the 1950s-born women in their fight for justice. Council notes that in September 2016 and March 23, councillors from all political parties supported a motion acknowledging the gross injustice suffered by women born in the 1950s and calling for swift resolution to the ongoing injustice of women affected by state pension inequality, including through compensation payments. Council notes the state pension age for women rose from 60 to 65 under the 1995 Pensions Act, with a further increase to 66 under the Coalition's 2011 Pension Act. The accelerated timescale in the Pension Act 2011 impacted upon many women, and at the time this was being debated in Parliament, ministers in the then Conservative Liberal Democrat government refused to introduce fair transitional arrangements to protect women born in the 1950s. The Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman has found the Department for Work and Pensions guilty of maladministration because these changes were not adequately communicated to all women born in the 1950s. The all-party parliamentary group on state pension inequality for women concluded that the maladministration had a significant impact on those that were affected. Despite the Ombudsman's finding, the previous government did not act on the recommendation. Council recognises on the 4th of July 2024, the new Labour government inherited a woeful and unprecedented financial situation as a result of both the Liberal Democrats and Conservatives' dire mismanagement of the economy over the previous 14 years. That the recklessness of the previous government has placed immeasurable pressures on this government, their ability to tackle long-standing injustices, like those encountered by the women born in the 1950s, while also dealing with the wider fiscal challenges facing the nation. That despite the significant challenges and constraints, there is still a moral case to address the injustice and to seek a fair and proportionate resolution. Council supports the findings of the APPG on state pension inequality that highlighted the injustices faced by some women born in the 1950s. The government giving further consideration to how the estimated 10% of the 1950s women were affected by this could, in the first instance, be identified and thereafter offered appropriate compensation, acknowledging the financial constraints facing the nation, but also recognising the need for justice. Council therefore resolves to write to the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions and the Chancellor of the Exchequer and urge them to recognise the impact that this injustice has had on some women and their families across Sunderland, Washington and the coalfields. Explore a fair and affordable resolution in line with the PHSO's recommendations and maintain their commitment for robust communication if there are any changes to state pension ages in the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Jones, would you like to second the motion? The amendment, sorry?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Under Rule 15.7.1. Can we have a ruling on whether this negates the motion? Because it's absolutely obliterated it, and it's the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to let the amendment go ahead because it doesn't negate it. There is a few changes.
One rule for Labour, one for everyone else.
Can I just ask you if you have got any disagreements to take it outside of this chamber, please, when there's people here? It's a public meeting, but you need to follow the constituents and the rules. Thank you very much. Gone quiet? Thank you. Councillor Smith, would you like to speak on the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have anything to add because I think the amendment covers everything adequately. Thank you very much.
Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment?
Councillor Edgeworth. Councillor Gibson, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Warren, Councillor Burrell, sorry, Councillor Heron, Councillor Warren, I've got your name, thank you. Could I just check, Councillor Mullen had given prior indication of wishing to speak. Do you not wish to speak on the amendment? Do you speak? So, Madam Mayor, the speakers are Councillors Edgeworth, Gibson, O'Brien, Warren, Heron and Mullen, and there is a right of reply to Councillor Fagan.
Councillor Edgeworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is the vilest thing I've ever seen since I've become a councillor. It's so weak, and I think you should all take those Waspi badges off now, because you're not standing in solidarity, you're doing anything but. And I've lost a lot of respect for Alison Smith, in all honesty, over this. I think it's pathetic to take out all references to the Ombudsman, which specifically recommends compensation for maladministration between 2005 and 2007. It's ridiculous. You're slagging off the last government for not implementing the Ombudsman's findings when it came out in March 2024 and the election was called a few months later.
On what rail?
Under 15.15.1.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, the notice of motion moved by Councillor Smith absolutely expressly states that we in the motion that the Department of Work and Pensions was found at maladministration, and we've absolutely kept it in. So the statement by Councillor Edgeworth is factually incorrect according to the wording of the motion.
I am happy to uphold that, and we will carry on.
Thank you. I think Labour councillors who moved the motion in March 2023 and shamefully got pictures of themselves with a woman affected to try and boost their own election chances should hold their heads in shame with this amendment. Here they are at the first opportunity, ditching them, and for what? Because the Keir Starmer Yes Man leader has told you to. And why has the Starmer Yes Man leader of this council decided to try and water it down and weaken this motion? Because he's using his position of leader of the council in a desperate bid to audition to become an MP, and he's not making a very good job of it. And all of the Labour councillors are sat behind...
Order, Madam Mayor.
On what rail?
Under 15.15.1.
Go ahead.
I absolutely have no ambition to be a Member of Parliament.
Carry on. Can we carry on?
And all of the Labour councillors are sat behind, the majority of which didn't support him, and if rumours are to be believed, have submitted letters of no confidence in him, need to take a stand. Some things are more important than defending the indefensible, no matter if your party is in government. These women, who you all gave their backing to in March 2023, deserve justice, as recommended by the independent Ombudsman. And if you all fall in line and vote for this pathetic amendment, just so the Keir Starmer Yes Man leader can sit in the meeting, parrot the government lines and prove his loyalty to the Labour government, then you need to look yourself in the eye and have some self-respect. Other Labour groups have done the decent thing and pledged their support unreservedly for the Waspi women in places like Hull. Other Labour MPs in the region, like Mary Foy in Durham, have had the decency to say they disagree with the government. When are you going to take a stand and realise that you're meant to be in politics to stand up for what is right and show solidarity with the people who need our help, people like the Waspi women in the gallery today? What more is it going to take before some of you do the right thing and not just what Michael Mordy tells you to do because Kim McGuinness and Keir Starmer have told him to? Labour are making it harder for older people to heat their homes. There's 15% cuts coming to departmental spending, and you're backing £1 billion in welfare cuts for the poorest and most vulnerable in society, many of which are Waspi women. This new Labour age of austerity is balancing the books on the back of the poorest and most vulnerable in society, and it's time you, Labour councillors in this chamber, took a stand. Get a grip. Do the right thing and stand in solidarity with these Waspi women. Vote against this weak, pathetic, insulting amendment and demonstrate your full-throated support for these women by voting for the original motion as unamended. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
In the course of her speech, Councillor Smith referred to economic mismanagement on the part of the coalition government between 2010 and 2015. Rather a long gap between 2015 and 2024 when your party took office, a gap of 9 years. But if we're going to trawl over the economic history, let's go back just a little bit further to 2008, 2009, when, in effect, the banking system collapsed. And that was largely down to successive governments' failure to control the banks, reckless deregulation resulting in an explosion in subprime mortgages, which are ultimately repayable. The only real parallel with this was the great crash of 1929, which involved share prices and speculation in share prices. This was about speculative bank loans for property, but the principle was the same. That great Liberal, Vincent Cable, warned against this recklessness. I'll quote him. He referred to the privatisation of profit and the nationalisation of loss. A colossal hole was left in the budget due to the need to buy out the banks, which were effectively bankrupt. They were, in effect, nationalised for a period of years until the subprime mortgages were eventually fed out of the system. And they were then returned to the private sector. Yet there was no acknowledgement by Councillor Smith of these colossal errors. As for the substance of the amendment, to me it appears to be all about love, motherhood and apple pie, and largely devoid of substantive proposals. Therefore, colleagues, I urge rejection of the motion, and it's time to send a clear amendment, I beg your pardon, Madam Mayor. It's time to send a clear message to the government that regardless of our political allegiances, we disagree with their decision. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I can't see because of that blind there. I don't. I'm that disgusted. I'm that disgusted that a member of this chamber said affordability. What's affordable to you guys? Is it 20p? A pound? £5? Who knows? These women deserve their payment. They've worked all their lives and they deserve what they're owed. All you've done is prove to me what I expected from you in government. You're nastier than the Tories. All you're doing is cutting on the backs of the poorest in society to benefit the richest. Do you know what you could have done to pay for this this rightful injustice? You could have had a wealth tax. I remember you guys when you wanted a wealth tax. Don't want a wealth tax now because you want to do your best Margaret Thatcher impression and you want to cut on the backs of the poorest in society. And you're taking £5 billion out of disabled benefits. You're taking these women's rightful compensation. You should be ashamed of yourself. So can someone over there please tell me what's affordable? What do you think is affordable for their pain and suffering? I'll give way now to hopefully get an answer to that.
Madam Mayor, can I have point of clarity, please? Thank you. I did hear you jump in, Councillor, at that point, but the sentence actually read, explore a fair and affordable resolution in line with the PHSO's recommendations. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I understand it's a very emotive subject, so let's please get through the business. Thank you. Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just don't understand the position that's been adopted by former comrades and colleagues across that way. I am disgusted, and to be honest with you, I'm not just disgusted about this. I'm disgusted that you're even prepared to back this Labour Party. This isn't the Labour Party. This is the Tory Party Mark II. It's nothing more. You're punching down on the weakest in society and you sit and try and justify it. In any political system, ladies and gentlemen, there is money. In any political system. but there's also choices. This Labour Party, being led by that liar-in-chief, Starmer, has lied to his own party, lied to the British people. He's ditched every promise he ever made to the British people, and he's holding office, as far as I'm concerned, as an absolute imposter, as he is. Right? It is my view, Madam Mayor, right, that everybody in this chamber should be voting for the original motion and get rid of that scary amendment, because that's what it is, and give these women the support they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hurren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I note that the Labour amendment, which is broadly supportive of the original motion, has been greeted by the opposition with staged dismay. Not for the first time, we see members opposite opt for rhetoric over facts, and this is a situation of the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives making, and they now seek to use this as a political weapon against the Labour Government and Sunderland's Labour Council. Waspi women, as a proud trade unionist, I stand in solidarity with you, and I wish you nothing but success in your endeavours. And I'm so disappointed that you tonight have had to witness this shambolic display from the Liberal Democrats. And I say to you that Labour do not view this as a political tool or a way to grab a cheap headline. And I urge the Council to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak now?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second the amended motion this evening. I think the motion is very clear from the outset that since 2016, this Labour group has stood shoulder to shoulder with the Waspi women, and that is unrelenting. We still stand with you now, regardless of what the opposition are trying to imply. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I would say that I agree with what Paul Edgeworth said about the content of this amendment. It does seem to be incredibly long, given that opposition ones have been ruled out for their length before. I'm sure there won't be an amendment to the next motion on grooming gangs, because that would be absolutely sick if there was. This Waspi motion and the saga around this is one of multiple examples of Labour's hypocrisy and lies being exposed now that they're in power. For 14 years, Labour MPs and councillors made promise after promise and criticised the then Conservative government from the sidelines, promising that Labour would do everything better. In reality, this is a government of amateurs who are pursuing policies to the right of George Osborne that they didn't tell anybody about before the election, and all of the commitments they did make have now been broken. Who'd have thought that a Labour government would target first pensioners, then small businesses, then the disabled, and then the world's poorest, all in their first year, all while the committed lifelong socialists who previously championed Jeremy Corbyn's policies, with the exception of Councillor Vaughan, now sit back and look on in silence because they put party before principle. The Waspi women, as the Lib Dems have helpfully reminded us with their motion, the original motion, are just the latest group to be betrayed and sacrificed at the altar of the fictional £22 billion black hole, a lie so unconvincing that 8 months after it was introduced, the OBR refuses to verify that it ever existed. Labour in office hasn't just betrayed its principles, it's betrayed the people to whom it made promises, and not just at a national level. The Labour group in Sunderland paraded the Waspi women around 2 years ago in this chamber, making promises to them that they personally have now broken. The delusion, built up over 14 years, that Labour was morally superior to its opponents, has been shattered by the, at times, hilarious incompetence of your national government, which seems desperate to humiliate itself and the country at every possible opportunity. The Waspi women were a vehicle to power for Labour and nothing more than that. and they have been used and discarded now that they no longer serve a purpose, something which some of its councillors must also consider will soon be true of themselves.
Thank you. Councillor Fagan, would you like your right of reply?
Don't hold back.
Well, I'm quite pleased the sun's in my eyes because that means I can't see the faces over there, which it's a disgrace, to be honest. The amendment just completely weakens the original motion, completely ignores the fact that a resolution's already been given, ignores the fact that the Ombudsman, this is the first time a government's actually ignored the recommendations of an Ombudsman. This is not democracy at all. And basically, the amendment just attempts to shift the blame. It kind of tries to bring the conversation back to the original maladministration instead of the fact that the Ombudsman have recommended that these ladies should have compensation. You know, and basically, I know Alison's saying that they should explore a resolution. A resolution's been given, and the resolution is, and it's been ruled by the Ombudsman, that these ladies deserve compensation. And now you just want to do another review and look at another resolution and different outcome. At the end of the day, these ladies deserve compensation, and another review and another resolution is just going to come back to the same conclusion, that these ladies deserve compensation. And to just say to look at an alternative resolution is not the answer. The answer's already been given, and these ladies need the compensation that they deserve. And I just think this amendment is just pathetic, really. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if the officer could start the vote running, please.
Vote no to evil.
And members, the vote will be closing now. And so if the vote can be closed, please. There are 44 votes in favour of the amendment and 18 against, and so the amendment is carried.
Thank you. As the amendment's been carried, would you like me to read the full substantive motion, or is it already been? No. Thank you. Does any member wish to comment further on the substantive motion? No. Is the substantive motion agreed? Agreed. Do you vote? Would you like a vote on the substantive motion?
So if the officer could open the vote again, please. And members, the vote will be closing shortly. And so if the officer could close the vote, please. There are 37 votes in favour, 1 abstention and 11 votes against. And therefore the new substantive motion is carried.
We will now deal with the notice of motion. We will now deal with the notice of motion, which is titled the J Report, Recommendations on Grooming Gangs. I call upon Councillor Mullen to read and move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This council endorses the request of colleagues at Oldham Council in their call for a national inquiry into child rape gangs and believes it is inappropriate for government ministers to expect local councils to conduct inquiries of such importance or to be able to appropriately resource them. Council notes the recent comments of Professor Alexis Jay, chair of the Grooming Gang inquiry established by the Conservative government in 2016, who has said of her review recommendations that locally people need to step up to the mark and to do things that have been recommended. Council therefore agrees to meet this challenge and instructs senior officers to implement all of the J recommendations that can practically be adopted locally. The Chief Executive should be the named responsible person for their implementation. This should include, as a minimum, an amendment to the Code of Conduct to add a mandatory reporting of child sexual abuse requirement. Any councillor who does not fulfil the new obligations of mandatory reporting will have breached the Code of Conduct. The Chief Executive exploring and implementing ways to make mandatory reporting compulsory for all employees and advising the HR Committee of his preferred route to doing this, and considering how a mandatory reporting clause can be embedded into council contracts through procurement processes and into all area committee funded schemes, so that all council contractors or grant recipients must voluntarily agree to a mandatory reporting statement. And if there's an amendment, could I please have a printed copy of what that is? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Reid, do you second the motion?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to speak immediately after Councillor Mullen.
Councillor Mullen, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Since we met in January when this motion was first put on the agenda pack, the Labour group in North Tyneside Council has voted for it unamended and set the precedent that other Labour groups should do so as well. There are no grounds upon which to amend this, particularly with the very political amendment that flashed up on the screen earlier. I want to focus my remarks on two elements of this motion. First, the government's proposal that inquiries should be undertaken by councils, and then secondly, the recommendations of the report. For the last 15 years, the Labour Party has told us that councils have been cut to the bone, that they don't have funding available for basic services, and that government did not properly address their needs. Now, a Labour minister has proposed that, in spite of all of that, councils should run their own inquiries into child rape gangs. The cost involved of doing this, of appointing a senior lawyer to chair it, of appointing legal counsel to run the evidence sessions, of appointing a secretariat, is apparently something that government thinks councils can now afford. But beyond the cost, councils do not have the power to compel witnesses, and they likely won't be able to find the right expertise to run such an inquiry. There's some evidence of a U-turn at the national level, but the suggestion from a former minister in the first place was absurd. The Labour MPs Dan Carden, Sarah Champion and Paul Waugh and Mayor Andy Burnham have all since joined the cross-party calls for a national inquiry into these crimes, and we did the same. Turning now to mandatory reporting. Since submitting this motion, the Home Secretary has announced that she's considering making this a requirement of everybody in public life. We welcome this unambiguously as the right thing to do and acknowledge that our government should have done that. But we think that this council should adopt this practice immediately rather than wait for the Home Office and make it an explicit feature of our Code of Conduct, as well as embedding it into our procurement process in the same way that modern slavery features within that. The requirement to compel mandatory reporting is a reflection of a root cause of the rape gang scandals that have occurred in other parts of the country and which colleagues elsewhere believe may not yet have been uncovered in their part of the country. In learning about the allegations that the first inquiry uncovered the systematic rape, intoxication and abuse of children by gangs of men who, in Jack Straw's words, considered women to be pieces of meat, were covered up by some figures in local government, both elected and officers, whose instincts were to suppress this. They considered it their role not to expose or challenge this wrongdoing, but to appoint themselves as arbiters, determining whether reporting the sexual abuse of children was worth doing. In their judgment, in too many cases, it wasn't worth doing. They did that for reasons including keeping the peace, keeping cohesion, and other excuses that simply don't cover what they did. But their judgment led them to think otherwise. They thought they were doing the right thing. They offered a defence of people who claim the ability to, in the words of Christopher Hitchens, ventriloquise the divine to justify savage acts against women and children. And it's easy for me to say as an atheist that no religion should be allowed to cover up child sexual abuse in the name of defending institutions of faith, but that is exactly what happened. On the contrary, I struggle to understand how anybody who believes in a God would accept that happening in their name. Yet that is precisely what has happened in our country, a misplaced, misjudged view about what was good for a community led people in positions of power within local institutions, people who should have been trustworthy, to cover up the very crimes that now haunt those communities and lead others to question their own safety. Many of the motions that we've debated over the years in this chamber have been trivial, from people who fought in the Spanish Civil War to people eating free meals after full council. They were actually in the same meeting. But this one is far from trivial. It asks the Chief Executive and the political leadership to make it binding on all of us, and tells the public that we will willingly be bound by a requirement to report any instance of child sexual abuse that we learn about. And it says to the public that nothing is worthy of a cover-up, and that to us, the lives of children must be protected at any cost.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I rise today to speak in strong support of this motion. A motion that confronts one of the gravest challenges of our time, the scourge of child sexual exploitation by grooming gangs. This council has a chance to stand not just with our colleagues in Oldham, but with every child in Sunderland who deserves our protection, every survivor who demands our action, and every community that expects our resolve. This is not a choice, it is a duty. The Jay report, led by Professor Alexis Jay, laid bare a horrifying truth in Rotherham. At least 1,400 children exploited, abused, and failed by the very systems meant to shield them. It wasn't an anomaly, it was a warning. A warning echoed in Oldham, Rochdale, Telford and beyond. Professor Jay herself, chair of the National Grooming Gang Inquiry since 2016, has called on us, local leaders, to step up to the mark and implement her recommendations. This motion answers that call. It says Sunderland will not wait, will not waver, and will not let our children down. We join Oldham Council in demanding a national inquiry into child rape gangs because this crisis is too vast, too complex for local councils alone to bear. It's unfair, absurd even, for government ministers to expect us to shoulder full inquiries without proper resources. But while we push for national accountability, we cannot sit idle. This motion commits us to act locally, to do what we can, where we can, now. It instructs our senior officers, led by the Chief Executive, to implement every practicable recommendation from the Jay Review. That's not a vague promise, it's a mandate with teeth. And what does that mandate look like? It starts with mandatory reporting, a line in the sand. This motion amends our code of conduct so that any councillor who fails to report child sexual abuse breaches it, plain and simple, no excuses, no exceptions. It tasks the Chief Executive to make reporting compulsory for every council employee, working with the HR committee to get it done. And it goes further, embedding this duty into our procurement process and area committee schemes. So every contractor, every grant recipient signs up to the same standards. If you work with Sunderland City Council, you protect Sunderland's children. That's the deal. Some might ask, why us? Why now? Because the threat hasn't gone away. The patterns Professor Jay uncovered, organised grooming, institutional silence, aren't confined to other towns. They could be here, lurking in the shadows. The Jay report gave us a roadmap, Mandatory reporting, better data, stronger safeguards. We don't need to reinvent it, we need to use it. This motion is about leadership. It's about saying Sunderland will not be a bystander in this fight. It names the Chief Executive as the one responsible, ensuring accountability starts at the top. It builds a culture where no one, councillor, employee or partner, can turn a blind eye. And it honours the survivors who spoke out, whose courage demands we match it with our own. Councillors, this is our moment to lead, not follow. Pass this motion and we tell our community, your children matters, your safety matters, your trust in us matters. We tell predators there's no hiding here in Sunderland, and we tell the nation Sunderland steps up. I urge you to vote yes for justice, for protection and for the future of every child in this city. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I understand that the Leader wishes to move an amendment. Can I ask you to read it?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. In the first sentence, delete the word endorses and replace with the word notes. Delete the remaining text after acknowledges and replace with...
And what the...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under 14.7, that's already negated what we're saying. We're not noting, we're fully endorsing.
I'd like to hear the full amendment and then we'll make our decision. Thank you.
Delete the remaining text after acknowledges and replace with that the policy of the current government is the same as the previous Conservative government in that such inquiries are better carried out on a local level, such as the inquiries in Derby, Rotherham and Telford. Insert a new second paragraph that reads, Council further acknowledges that a national 2-year inquiry specifically on grooming gangs that had not already been subject to high-profile independent investigations was published in February 2022. Insert a new third paragraph that reads, Council expresses its sincerest regrets that the previous Conservative government did not act on any of the recommendations from the February 2022 report into grooming gangs, nor any of the 20 recommendations from the wider report into child sexual abuse, published by Professor Alexis J in October 2022, before they left office on July the 5th, 2024. Insert a new fourth paragraph that reads, sexual abuse and exploitation are the most vile and horrific crimes involving rape, violence, coercive control, intimidation, manipulation and deep long-term harm. All perpetrators must be punished and pursued, and the victims and survivors must be protected and supported. Insert a new fifth paragraph that reads, therefore, Council strongly endorses the Labour Government's approach to this issue and their action of strengthening the law, taking forward recommendations from the independent inquiries and supporting stronger police action and protection for victims. In the seventh paragraph, delete the words to implement and replace with to make the necessary arrangements to implement. In the first bullet before, delete the words an amendment and replace with request that the Council's Standards Committee brings forward to full Council as soon as possible a recommendation to amend the. In the last bullet point, add the words who are not currently subject to these clauses become subject to them after grant recipients, and delete the remaining words so that the amended motion reads, this Council notes the request of colleagues at Oldham Council in their call for a national inquiry into child rape gangs and acknowledges that the policy of the current government is the same as the previous Conservative government in that such inquiries are better carried out on a local level, such as the inquiries in Derby, Rotherham and Telford. Council further acknowledges that a national 2-year inquiry specifically on grooming gangs that had not already been subject to a high-profile independent investigation was published in February 2022. Council expresses its sincere regrets that the previous Conservative government did not act on any of the recommendations from the February 2022 report into grooming gangs, nor any of the 20 recommendations from the wider report into child sexual abuse published by Professor Alexis J in October 2022 before they left office on July the 5th, 2024. Sexual abuse and exploitation are the most vile and horrific of crimes involving rape, violence, coercive control, intimidation, manipulation and deep long-term harm. All perpetrators must be punished and pursued, and the victims and survivors must be protected and supported. Therefore, Council strongly endorses the Labour Government's approach to this issue and their action of strengthening the law, taking forward recommendations from the independent inquiries and supporting stronger police action and protection for victims. Council notes that the recent comments of Professor Alexis J, chair of the Grooming Gang Inquiry established by the Conservative Government in 2016, who has said of her review recommendation that locally people need to step up to the mark and do the things that have been recommended. Council therefore agrees to meet this challenge and instructs senior officers to make the necessary arrangements to implement all of the GEO review recommendations that can practically be adopted locally. The Chief Executive should be the named responsible person for their implementation. This should include, as a minimum, request that the Council Standard Committee brings forward to full Council as soon as possible a recommendation to amend the Code of Conduct to add a mandatory reporting of child sexual abuse requirement. Any councillor who does not fulfil the new obligation of mandatory reporting will have breached the Code of Conduct. The Chief Executive exploring and implementing ways to make mandatory reporting compulsory for all employees and advising the HR Committee of his preferred route to doing this. Consider how a mandatory reporting clause can be embedded into Council's contracts through procurement processes and into all area committee funded schemes so that all council contractors or grant recipients who are not currently subject to these clauses become subject to them. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Point of order. The 14.7 again, Madam Mayor, there are 4 areas where this is substantially different. As I've already said, we aren't noting, we're fully endorsing the other council's requests. That has been completely stripped out. It's been made political in a way that it wasn't before. We don't care if this is the same as the last government's policy. I criticised that one as well. It wasn't mentioned. It's changed the policy on enquiries. This now says that we support Labour's policy on local enquiries. This motion was criticising that. We don't support it. It's now been fully flipped around, and it endorses the Labour government's approach. This was criticising the government. This is now a new motion. There can't be a clearer example of an abuse of these rules, aside from the fact it's completely sick that you would even think to touch this after your party put 3 paedophiles up as election candidates. This is an absolute breach of the rules.
Okay. We don't uphold that and the amendment will go ahead. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Checker on what
Sorry,
rule?
point of order under Rule 14.1k and under the Equality Act 2010. Could I move an adjournment so that members of my group who need reasonable adjustments to prevent disabled people from being disadvantaged in the workplace under the Equality Act, and those who can't see the screen because of the sun could have a few minutes to look at this amendment given the serious nature of it? Thank you.
We'll adjourn for 10 minutes.
how we're drunk. We're just wondering how we're drunk people up again. Sorry? We're just wondering how we're drunk people up again. If we stop to
Ring the bell again,
Or shall I? Members, if we can all start taking our seats again, we are ready to start. Thank you.
Graham.
But I'm going to tell the Mayor. Madam Mayor, Councillor Fiona Miller has been taken unwell and has had to go home, so that is why she's absent from the chamber. Can we get that noted, please? Thank you, Councillor O'Brien.
Let's not adjourn. Thank you. We will now invite Councillor Checker to second the amendment.
I second the...
Thank you. Leader, would you like to speak on the amendment?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, this is a very emotive subject. The Crime Survey estimates that 500,000 children every year experience some form of child sexual abuse. These cruel and sadistic crimes have not been taken seriously for too long, and far too many children have been failed. Brave survivors speaking out have shone a light on terrible crimes, the failure of institutions to act, be it in care homes, in Rochdale, Asian grooming gangs in Rotherham or Telford, the abuse covered up within faith institutions, including the Church of England and the Catholic Church, or within family homes. In opposition, Labour did call for a national independent inquiry into child sexual abuse and supported the establishment of the inquiry expertly led by Professor Alexis Jay when it was launched in 2014 by the previous government. Over 7 years, the inquiry engaged with more than 7,000 victims and survivors, processed 2 million pages of evidence and published 61 reports and publications. Yet the previous government failed to implement a single one of the 20 recommendations from the final inquiry report. Professor Jay also ran a specific investigation strand into child sexual exploitation by organised gangs, which ran for 2 years and produced a separate report with a series of recommendations in February 2022. That report concluded that police forces and local councils were still failing to tackle this serious crime and set out further recommendations for change, yet far too little progress has been made. The current government has set out that they will continue to support further investigations that are needed, including police investigations and local independent inquiries and reviews, which can expose failings and wrongdoing in local areas and institutions, as we've seen in Telford, Rotherham and Greater Manchester. And I understand from reading press reports that the Home Secretary will set out a more detailed action plan on this closer to Easter. But, Madam Mayor, the interests of victims and survivors of child sexual abuse must come first. Everyone knows we have had a national inquiry that took 7 years. As part of that, there was a 2-year standalone inquiry. Do we really think kicking the can down the road another 2 years or 7 years for another inquiry to take place is in the best interest of victims? To make them wait for another report to tell us what we already know, that there is an epidemic of male violence against women, girls and children in this country, and that abuse comes in many forms and is perpetrated by men of all races, all religions and none. Just so national politicians conduct the issue and look like they are doing something about it, when in fact they will be doing absolutely nothing to protect victims. It's time to put victims first. It's time for action, not burying our collective heads in the sand by waiting for the publication of another report that has already been written. That won't get the victims the change and the justice they deserve. Madam Mayor, this debate this afternoon, I'm afraid, has very little about implementing recommendations from a Elections Day report and everything to do with the fact that the Tory party are terrified of losing votes to reform. You should be absolutely ashamed of yourselves for trying to exploit this for political gain. The Tory government had the Jay report for nearly 2 years and did absolutely nothing to implement any of its recommendations. And now they are falling over themselves, Madam Mayor, to create a narrative that the current government are protecting paedophiles. It's sickening and it's evidently wrong.
Point of order.
I'm not real.
Point of At no point did I suggest that the current government is protecting paedophiles at all, but it shows how desperate you are. If you're worried about who might be losing votes to anybody, maybe you should be concerned about losing votes to Graham Miller, because my group elected me, but they didn't pick you.
Might not be referencing the motion or the context, but on your Facebook page, Anthony, on the 10th of January, you published mugshots of Lewis Atkinson and Bridget Phillipson saying the exact same thing. So I'm not going to take lectures from a party that did absolutely nothing on the Jay report, and now all of a sudden have found your moral compass. Madam Mayor, in an environment where threats to the safety of MPs and councillors and their families is at an all-time high, and democracy itself has been undermined by unelected billionaires, foreign hostile governments and anti-state actors, feeding the online beast complete and utter fiction by ratcheting up the rhetoric to score cheap political points and win votes by misleading people is the worst kind of gutter politics. During this debate on this issue in public, I've seen our 3 MPs and other national politicians abused for voting against a publicity stunt of an amendment that sole purpose was to carry favour with the social media owner and hoodwink his followers into believing something that is blatantly not true, that the Labour government is protecting sex offenders. It wasn't about protecting children at all. And locally, you should hang your heads in shame, Anthony. You had 9 opportunities to bring this motion to full council between October 2022 and June 2024 when you were in government, and you did nothing. And now you've suddenly found, as I've mentioned before, that moral compass. The top and bottom of this, Madam Mayor, is that you are peddling prejudice politics ahead of actually protecting children. Because if you really cared about that, you would have implemented Jay when you were in government, you would have brought this motion before now, and you wouldn't have voted against the Children's Bill currently going through Parliament. Madam Mayor, just in conclusion, the amendment that we put forward today, I think, is factual. It implements exactly what the points that the original motion does. But I really think people should think long and hard about the rhetoric they use in trying to portray things that are evidently not true. This should be a cross-party issue. We should be protecting children. We should do all in our power as a council, as local leaders, as councillors to do that. But to turn a blind eye to the vast majority of the abuse and focus purely on one element is doing a disservice to the victims. This government, I'm pleased to say, has grasped that nettle. We're putting victims first. We will absolutely support local areas, the police, to uncover anywhere where this abuse might be taking place, punish the perpetrators and protect victims. I ask Council to support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Checker, would you like to speak on the amendment?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to add to the Leader's comments.
Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment?
Councillor Butler. Councillor Dagg. Councillor Dixon. Councillor Walton. So, Madam Mayor, the speakers are Councillors Butler, Dagg, Dixon, Walton, and Councillor Mullen has the right of reply.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, as the father of 4 girls, it's absolutely horrifying that we're even in here debating this issue. It's sickening, and I certainly can't say here what I think should happen to these perpetrators. Madam Mayor, I think all of the recommendations in the J report should be implemented at the earliest opportunity. And looking at the original motion, I think there's some fantastic points in there. I really do. And it's a shame we can't have a united front and actually, you know, as a united council, condemn this in the strongest possible way. I think the amendment goes further. I think it goes a little bit further, and it does obviously. Sorry, Madam Mayor, the chuntering is just really immature on such a serious issue. I expect better of elected members of this city. To move on, Madam Mayor, it's a slightly bigger issue than Waspi. That's what I will say. This is about the sexual abuse of children. So I think the chuntering should stop. I have no way of, and I do not want to make this political, Madam Mayor, because it absolutely should not be a political point. I think we would all agree on that. What I will say, members, people in glass houses should not throw stones. That's what I will say, because when people aren't being responded to by email about vulnerable teenagers and their accommodation in this city, and I won't name them elected members, shame on them. And now I have to move in and do that job for them because it's within their local area. But I'm happy to do that because this is about the protection of children. So they should seriously sit there and consider, do you support this or do you not? Because you will be answering emails if you support it that much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dagg.
Madam Mayor, I stand before you. This is my maiden speech and I want to make it as fairly apolitical. However, there are aspects that I would like to say in support of the amendment. I was a CEOP ambassador. I don't know how many people here have heard of a CEOP ambassador, but everybody in this chamber should hear of the work of CEOP. Sometimes students know it through the work of Think You Know, and the aim is of that organisation, which is organised through the National Crime Agency, is to stop sexual exploitation, particularly online exploitation of children. Okay? This isn't a new body. It's served children for many, many years. I stopped actually being a CEOP ambassador just a couple of years ago when my job role changed. But I really think that it is too easy to blame grooming gangs. It's not about grooming gangs. It's about grooming in lots of different ways, of which grooming gangs is one way. And I think that's one of the things I would say about the new legislation. The new legislation is designed, no matter what kind of exploitation that children are subject to, the government is aiming to stop it. And how on earth anybody could oppose that, I really do not understand. So could I thank my colleagues for their erudite expositions of the reasons for this amendment and say how much I actually support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. We haven't mentioned the fact that all these local authorities were Labour run. So we can ask you questions about what was the Labour Party doing during the time when these things were happening. But this motion was totally non-political. And the suggestion from Councillor Mordy that we are trying to appease reform is one of the most insulting things that I've ever listened to as a councillor who's been here for a long time. This is a genuine motion of concern. We wanted it to be passed by all members of the council. And for you to say that I'm bothered about reform when something like this is in front of me, I think it's one of the most insulting things I've ever heard, and I would like you to withdraw it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm speaking really just to raise something that was spoken about when we had this motion before the Chamber in January, following advice from the solicitor about training for councillors, Madam Mayor. And I do think it's an important addition to making us more effective as councillors and how to better protect children. And my view would strongly be that as councillors, we should be required to complete child safeguarding training, which must make us better able to take decisions regarding children and young people. That was certainly part of the advice we had from the solicitor before this motion was before the Chamber in January. I would not like it to get lost, and I'm asking today that we at least consider starting that process. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mullen, would you like your right of reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just respond to some points that the leader raised. He used the phrase child sex abuse survivors must come first, but clearly the Labour Party has to come first, because this was in no way political, and you've completely turned it into a political debate, anxious about your own position either within the Labour group or within Grangetown or wherever you choose to stand. I mean, to say that it's disappointing would be an understatement. I can't believe the tone that you've adopted in changing this into something that it previously wasn't. Then to warn about being careful of the rhetoric that we used after what you said. And then for Councillor Butler, I don't know if I've misunderstood you, but you appear to be saying a member of the opposition has been involved in a grooming gang, or...
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Apologies. That's not what I said, Councillor Mullen. This was about accommodation for vulnerable teenagers, which two members couldn't be bothered to reply to. Hence, the council officer got in touch with me to do their job for them and contact someone in the area to sort the issue. So it was on that point. I'm certainly not, saying what you have just repeated there. That's no. Don't know where you got that.
Well, I got that because you implied that it would, whatever this email was, meant they couldn't support the original motion about grooming gangs, but I don't see what it's got to do with teenagers' accommodation not replying to an email. The tone of what you said
Point
really...
of personal clarification again, Madam Mayor. Don't know if Anthony's doing this on purpose, but obviously, no, this is about vulnerable children. These emails are about vulnerable children, which the members can't be bothered to answer. I won't name them, but I'll have a chat with you after.
I still don't think it justifies the point that they couldn't have voted for the motion, which is what he said. And then to say that this should have been done in a cross-party spirit and to imply that we somehow undermined that, despite this being your amendment. But the problem actually isn't really to do with the speech. The problem is to do with the fact that this was allowed in the first place. It's doubled in size. The meaning has changed. It's now supportive of the Labour government. And frankly, it shouldn't have been allowed to go ahead. So regretfully, Madam Mayor, as a point of order under Rule 13A, I would like to propose that we change the chair of the meeting, and we'll seek a seconder in support of that. The decision to allow this to be an amendment, when really it is a separate motion entirely, the meaning of which has changed completely beyond any recognition to what we put forward, is obviously out with the rules. And I can't understand how you came to a different conclusion. So I'd like to propose that the Deputy Mayor takes over chairing the meeting.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor, given that outrageous ruling.
Madam Mayor, could I just ask Councillor Mullen if he could clarify the rule under which he's making that motion, please?
Yes, 13A.
Madam Mayor, through you, 13A is regarding the scope of motions. I'm afraid I don't understand the reference that Councillor Mullen has made.
In the copy of the rules I've got, it says the motions may be moved without notice to appoint a chair of the meeting at which the motion is moved.
Thank you. So the rule is actually 14.1a. Madam Mayor, through you, that rule is designed to deal with the situation where there is not a chair at the meeting. The rules also provide that the ruling of the Mayor may not be challenged during a meeting, and in effect that's what Councillor Mullin is seeking to do.
Okay. Where are we up to? Sorry. We will now vote on the amendment.
So if the officer could commence the vote, please. And if the officer could close the vote, please. There are 42 votes in favour of the amendment, 17 votes against, and therefore the amendment is carried.
Would you like me to read out the full substantive motion? Thank you. Does any member wish to comment further on the substantive motion?
Councillor Edgeworth. Just Councillor Edgeworth, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Edgeworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there are obviously valid points in the motion as amended, but we can't support it because the amendment completely negates and reverses the entire thrust of the original motion, and we can't agree to a line which says that we strongly endorse the Labour government's approach to this issue, so we'll be voting against. Thank you.
Councillor Mullin, would you like the right of a further reply?
Just to repeat again, Madam Mayor, that I'm disgusted, so the Conservative group won't be participating in the meeting as a protest.
Is the substantive motion agreed? We will now move to a vote on the substantive motion.
The officer could open the vote, please. And if the vote could be closed, please. There are 42 votes in favour, 11 against, and so the new substantive motion is carried.
The next item is reception of petitions. Do any members have any petitions to present?
Madam Mayor, yes.
Sorry, who spoke?
Me.
Sorry, was that Councillor Duncan? Councillor Duncan and Councillor Mullin. Sorry if it was my hearing, I didn't hear that very clearly.
Madam Mayor, I'm totally delighted to deliver this petition on behalf of Pallion residents, 139 Pallion residents, around Pallion CCTV cameras, which states, we the undersigned, call Sunderland City Council to fund the CCTV cameras on St Luke's Terrace to ensure they are available to help police tackle shoplifting and antisocial behaviour.
Councillor Mullin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a petition signed by 253 residents of High Barnes, which reads, we, the undersigned, being residents of High Barnes and surrounding areas, oppose the Council's proposed bus lane on Chester Road, running from the crematorium to the A19, We ask the Council to cancel the proposed bus lane, replace the Broadway roundabout with traffic lights, and note the contents of the Barnes and Thornhill Conservatives resident consultation, which found over 98% opposition to the scheme.
Can we agree to refer these to the appropriate Chief Officer? The next item is questions from the public. I will now read out the questions that we have received. And the first one is traffic, Richard Avenue School, from Alan Rinaldi. Road traffic is increasing whilst the standard of driving is decreasing around Richard Avenue Primary School. Motorists are routinely illegally parking and driving along the pavement. Barnes Residents Association was at the forefront of the campaign to introduce 20 mph speed limit. However, this and restricted parking measures are proving ineffective in keeping the children attending school safe. What is the Council doing to improve the safety of the children attending the school? And I believe Councillor Leonard, you would like to answer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank Alan for the question. Children's safety is an absolute priority of this council, and road safety measures are an important part of that to ensure that children get to school safely. Generally, a number of measures have been introduced to reduce vehicle speeds and keep parked cars away from the entrances of schools. In terms of Richard Avenue, the West Area Committee has a priority of a project to tackle school parking. In order to make this priority achievable, officers and members working with schools undertook site meetings and a variety of actions were considered, including guardrails, planters, wardens, police, educational activities and parking buddies. The schools felt that parking buddies might help towards the issue, and the schools agreed to put parking buddies out for a short period of time at drop-off and again at pick-up. Richard Avenue currently have 6 of these which they can deploy. There have also been arrangements made for the Council's camera car to visit and provide some priority enforcement to help address any discriminate parking, and the school, alongside others in the borough, will be assessed as part of the Future School Streets programme. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is Chester Road Bus Improvement Scheme, and this has come from Stephen Pounder. Is local air quality monitoring to be carried out before, during and after the planned bus service improvement plan on the A183 Chester Road scheme? And I believe Councillor Leonard would like to reply.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Stephen, for the question. Air quality levels have been monitored along Chester Road for a number of years, and there is currently a robust baseline of data relating to this location which demonstrates that health-based air quality objectives are currently being met. Should any highway changes be made on this corridor, air quality monitoring would continue to allow the necessary comparative data to measure the effectiveness or otherwise of the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is on Jopling House, and this question comes from Linda Pounder. Up till the 30th of September 2024, a total of £8,095.63 has been spent on the purchase and refurbishment of Jopling House, Sunderland. What is the estimated timescale for this now council taxpayer-owned property to turn to a profit and help offset future council tax increases, or is this to be a long-term financial burden on the council taxpayers of Sunderland? And I believe Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Linda, for the question. Jobling's House is fully occupied and is an important part of the city's student accommodation offer. It was essential that the council acquire the property to protect this offer and improve the standard of accommodation available. The acquisition was supported by a third-party valuation, which acknowledged that some initial refurbishment works were required to address issues that had not been appropriately addressed by the previous building owner. These initial refurbishment works have now been completed, and the annual income from the property outweighs the annual operating costs, therefore generating an annual profit. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is on the school street scheme, and the question comes from Sam Johnston. The Finance Director told the Scrutiny Coordinating Committee that no funding had been allocated to school street schemes in the 2025-26 budget, but the Cabinet member has said otherwise. Can she today confirm how many new schemes will be rolled out, when they will be rolled out and how they will be chosen? And I believe Councillor Leonard would like...
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't present at the meeting, but the minutes show the Director of Finance, Mr Wilson, advised the Scrutiny Coordinating Committee in response to an inquiry from Councillor Mullen as to whether specific reference to school streets schemes has been included in the papers. Mr Wilson replied that he was not aware that this was the case. I think the confusion has been that there was no specific reference to a school streets within the capital programme report, but that the funding is included as part of a wider programme. The Council has recently received £40,000 development fund for school streets via active travel, which ties in with the new guidance received from central government on how to set up and manage a scheme. Council officers are currently using the guidance to assess all schools across the city, and those schemes taken forward will be funded through the Council's annual integrated transport block allocation that focuses on road safety.
Thank you. And again, school street scheme, and this question has come from a Thomas Such. Could the portfolio holder please outline for how many school street schemes she has ring-fenced funding in the 2025-26 budget and set out the process for deciding which schemes will be funded in the 2025-26 municipal year? Councillor Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the response is similar to my last response. The Council has recently received £40,000 development funding for school streets. Council officers are currently using the guidance to assess all schools across the city. Those deemed suitable for the scheme will be taken forward, funded through the Council's integrated transport block allocation that focuses on road safety. It is not possible to determine or put a number on which schemes will be taken forward at this time, due to the need to assess all schools and prioritise accordingly. Funding will be allocated accordingly once a full programme has been established. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is Marks and Spencer frontage, and the question comes from Greg Peacock. In 2019, the then Deputy Leader, Michael Maudy, said that the Duxford Shipyard archway would be taken down brick by brick, stored and then will be reconstructed. Can he make similar commitment to preserve and protect the M&S building frontage on the High Street, as it is one of the only truly beautiful buildings left in the city? Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Riverside Sunderland Master Plan, published in October 2020, identifies the future vision for the north of High Street West to provide a mixed-use development of ground floor retail and leisure uses with upper floors of office accommodation. The Master Plan document demonstrates the Council's intention to retain the existing Marks and Spencer building facade. In progressing with the next phase of the Riverside Sunderland development along High Street West, the Council's design team is currently finalising feasible development proposals. The design proposals for High Street West will be made available for consultation later in the year in advance of a planning application. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is about Subway University Station, and this comes from Hardip Singh. Brad. Nearly every evening at 6 p.m, the subway next to the University Metro station on Durham Road is awash with drug dealers. Can the leader please tell me what he can do to help tackle this persistent drug dealing problem, and can he say if the Lib Dem councillors have ever raised this? Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. We have been recently made aware of alleged rough sleeping and drug dealing activity in relation to the subway at Durham Road. I can say that I'm unaware of the source of those reports, but certainly no councillor from opposite the chamber has ever raised this with me. As a result of being made aware of this, neighbourhood wardens have carried out ad hoc patrols in the area. To date, the wardens have not witnessed any antisocial behaviour or drug dealing activity, but as a result of the new information relating to the timing of the activity, further patrols will be undertaken by neighbourhood wardens, and the intelligence obtained will be shared with Northumbria Police for appropriate action. I would like to thank the resident for raising this issue.
Thank you. The next question is around the Washington F-Pit, and this question comes from Linda Chapman. It is some time since the funding for the development of the F-Pit in Washington was first announced. When can we expect to see work start on the developing of this important historical and cultural site of Washington's mining heritage? And I believe Councillor Jones would like to reply.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much, Linda Chapman, for your question this evening. So I'm delighted to share that detailed designs are currently being developed by the design team for the development of the F-Pit Museum, Heritage Visitor Centre and Cafe. It's currently envisaged that the museum development works will begin towards the end of this year. The first phase of landscape improvements in Albany Park were largely completed in 2024, and the second phase, which was the wider park improvement works, were expected to commence in late summer or autumn in advance of starting the museum works. The F-Pit Museum and Albany Park regeneration programme will be discussed at Cabinet tomorrow, and plans to move forward with procuring contractors for the works. Further updates on the museum and park plans will be provided in the near future on the Let's Talk F-Pit and Albany Park page of the Council website, and further engagement opportunities for residents are being planned. Washington F-Pit remains a priority for this Council and this Labour group, despite further recent attempts by the Conservative and the Liberal Democrats to completely remove all the funding for the black hole in the ground, which one elected member referred to as during the last full council. Well, the black hole is much more than a black hole, and I've personally found that comment beyond disrespectful. Men and boys went into dangerous conditions in the dark so there could be light, with at least 39 men and boys losing their lives whilst working at the F-Pit. Not to mention the Bevan boys, who were conscripted to work there to support the Second World War efforts, who are now also recognised as veterans. So not only will the F-Pit serve as a fitting commemoration in memory of all the men and boys who work there, but it will also help to boost the economy of Washington by bringing visitors in. Our rich mining heritage across Washington, Sunderland and the coalfields are the threads that still keep some of our communities together, and I look forward to seeing the F-Pit works progress in that pace. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is on bus improvement, and the question comes from Alison Mason. The so-called consultations on bus improvement plans on Ripe Road, Durham Road and Chester Road have caused outrage over how one-sided they are. Will the Council commit to discarding these, given how little confidence residents have in these? And I believe Councillor Leonard, you would like to reply?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Alison, for the question. The Council has been making positive steps to improve engagement with residents, cyclists and public transport users. The newly developed engagement documents provide stakeholders with more detail and clear visuals on the proposals. This is to ensure that residents are fully informed of the proposals and allow them to make an informed opinion, whether positively or negatively. The Council has also started to develop in-person public events, which allows for residents to talk through the schemes in more detail. Officers will be reviewing recent engagements to see if further improvements can be made moving forward. The engagement exercise with the public regarding the BSIP proposals and the cycle lane is closed, and I would like to thank those who took part, and we are currently considering the responses and will continue to discuss the scheme proposals with ward members to ensure they are fully informed with any proposals or changes to those schemes. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is about the Sunderland Echo, and the question comes from Emma Porter. The Sunderland Echo published a joke about domestic abuse victim, claiming she would have looked black and blue at Christmas. Will the Cabinet Member for Equalities please condemn this sick joke and agree to move the Council statutory notices to another newspaper rather than funding a rag that does not take domestic abuse seriously? Deputy Leader, I believe you'd like to...
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I would like to thank the resident for this query and for raising attention to this very important issue. Domestic abuse is a serious issue and one that has devastating and long-standing impacts on individuals and families across Sunderland. Partners in the city are working together on a city-wide response to tackling domestic abuse and violence against women and girls as set out within our ambitious 10-year domestic abuse strategy, No More, our strategy to end domestic abuse and violence against women and girls. This query draws particular attention to the critical role prevention plays in eradicating abuse, and this is absolutely something we have prioritised within our new strategy. We will ensure action taken to tackle messages that perpetuate and or minimise abuse, and this form is embedded as part of our strategic approach to domestic abuse prevention. In relation to statutory notices, we have a duty to publish these in a newspaper circulating in the local area, but these are only one of the ways that we communicate with residents, and we will continue to strive and adapt and strengthen our approach to engagement to ensure we reach as many of our communities as possible with the issues that are important to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is after 3 parking, and the question comes from James Doyle. The leader will no doubt understand the significant financial pressure due to be exerted on Sunderland businesses as a result of the government's employer NIC increase. As a means of counteracting this disastrous policy, will he consider reinstating the free after 3 parking initiative across the city centre? And I believe Councillor Leonard would like to reply to that one.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, James, for the question. Although the Council made some changes to the free after 3 during January 2024, the scheme has actually been retained across the city centre. During October 2024, the free after 3 scheme was further extended to include the new station car park at Homeside, adding a further 200 free parking spaces after 3 p.m. The current car parks offering free after 3 include Station Car Park, Tatham Street, Nile Street, Gorse Road, West Weir Street and Charles Street, providing a total of 459 spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is Remembrance Day Group, and the question comes from Kevin Leonard. At the most recent Remembrance Day ceremony, I spoke with the leader personally about how we could improve the ceremony and the parade next year. With Sunderland being a proud home to many veterans, will the leader commit to setting up a working group involving local veterans and service personnel in advance of November 2025 so that the ceremony can be further improved this year? And Leader, I believe you'd like to respond.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to thank Kevin for his question and for his company in Chapman at the Remembrance Parade. Early discussions regarding the Remembrance Day Parade 2025 have already begun with initial discussions at the Veterans Forum on the 14th of March. At that meeting, it was agreed unanimously that wider engagement would be initiated to ensure that future events continue to honour our veterans and their contribution in a way that truly resonates with our community. We are committed to making the 2025 ceremony even more meaningful and welcome the further input from veterans and community members as we move forward. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is about disability benefit, and the question comes from Eleanor Grant. Will the leader of this council finally say enough is enough and condemn their government's actions in dismantling disability benefits? Something even the Conservative Party never dared to do. Leader?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And again, I've said it earlier in the debate, this is a very emotive subject, but we do need a welfare state that is there for us all when we need it, now and in the future, and that protects the most in need and delivers equality and dignity for all. There will always be some people who cannot work, and the government is absolutely committed to protecting them. But as I said, I haven't actually seen what the Chancellor has actually said today in the statement. But the Department of Work and Pension Secretary did announce £1 billion in the Commons to help people back to work. But I appreciate the sensitivities around this important subject, Madam Mayor, and would advise Ellen, if she still has concerns about this, to contact a Member of Parliament who will be able to contact the government directly on her behalf to share her concerns.
Thank you. And the next question is regarding Rickleton connectivity, and the question comes from Stephen Richardson. With the introduction of fibre broadband in the area, Landline telephones will become VoIP and will not operate in the event of a power failure. Large areas of Rickleton have poor to no mobile phone signal, so in the event of an emergency during a power outage, it could be impossible to connect with the emergency services. Are there any plans in place by mobile service providers to improve the connectivity in these areas? And I believe Councillor Smith, you would like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Communications providers are replacing the technology they use to provide fixed telephone lines. Their target for most customers is to complete this by January 2027. It is the responsibility of the communications provider, such as Sky, BT, TalkTalk, VMO2, to ensure that those that depend on a landline are provided a resilient solution that will allow customers to make calls to the emergency services in the event of a power outage. Government is working with Ofcom to ensure that this is the case. The Council will continue to encourage mobile network operators to improve coverage and provide the best possible services across Sunderland for the benefit of all residents. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to the questions from the members of the Council. The first question is around crime and antisocial behaviour and comes from Councillor Tobin. Crime and antisocial behaviour blights our streets, makes our people feel less safe. Oh, sorry, Councillor Tobin, sorry, read.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Crime and antisocial behaviour blights our streets, makes people feel less safe, damages small businesses and undermines any sense of pride in our communities. At the recent budget meeting, there was significant investment into community safety in Sunderland. Residents and businesses that I represent in the Chester Road area are particularly concerned regarding criminal activity, such as thefts and antisocial behaviour, and there was also a recent incident of serious violent crime which has shaken the whole community. Can I be updated on how the Council and Police are planning to approach tackling this issue to ensure residents and businesses can live and work without fear of being victims of crime?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I would like to thank Councillor Tobin for both raising this question and for your strong community leadership and standing up for the residents and the businesses in the Chester Road area by raising this with both myself, council officers and the police on behalf of your residents. Following your intervention and our liaison together with Northumbria Police, I can confirm that the incident of violent crime on Chester Road was an isolated incident resulting in a number of arrests and an ongoing investigation. Under your leadership, Councillor Tobin, reassurance patrols and visitors to businesses and premises have and continue to be actively carried out. Should any resident or business require any support or advice, or indeed yourself, you should be encouraged to contact the Council's Neighbourhood Enforcement Team direct. In relation to general antisocial behaviour and specific concerns relating to levels of theft in the area, I can advise that several days of action are planned across the West area in the forthcoming weeks. Chester Road will of course be included in this activity. In addition, the Council's neighbourhood wardens are regularly in the area, carrying out high visibility patrols and engaging with businesses. The Council itself is exploring if any CCTV cameras can be deployed in addition to this. Those businesses that have been directly affected by theft are in ongoing dialogue with Northumbria Police, and crime prevention advice has been given. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is roundabout at junction of Chester Road, Holborn Road. And I believe Councillor Hodson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Try that again. Following the public outcry about Labour's proposed Chester Road bus lanes and the Council going back on its promise of 22nd March 2023 to fully signalise the roundabout at the junction with Holborn Road and Springwell Road, will the portfolio holder agree to do a U-turn, scrap the bus lanes and install the promised traffic lights on the roundabout? Thank you.
Councillor Leonard.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson, for the question. Since the council meeting in March 2023, officers have been looking at a series of measures which included an option to improve the Springwell Road junction. Unfortunately, the modelling showed that the traffic lights at this junction would create significant delays along all roads at the junction, which would be unacceptable for all road users, so traffic lights are not a viable option at this time. However, council have been updated with this information already by my colleague, Councillor Johnston, the then portfolio holder at the council meeting on the 20th of March 2024. A question from the public about improvement works at the roundabout at Holborn in Chester was submitted by Stephen Donkin, now Councillor Donkin. In his response, Councillor Johnson explained, officers have previously undertaken some modelling that shows the introduction of other measures such as traffic signals could increase delays. Unfortunately, there are currently no plans to change the layout of this junction. The engagement exercise with the public regarding the BSIP proposal has closed. I would like to thank those who took part, and we are currently considering the responses and will publish our updated plans in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. A quick supplementary. Regarding that modelling, does it show that bus lanes will reduce traffic delays?
The modelling didn't include bus lanes at that time.
Thank you. The next question is enforcement activities of the police. And the question, I believe, has come from Councillor Hartnack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst recognising the recent efforts of Northumbria Police with regard to illegal motorcycles and high-powered electric bikes and scooters, what is the Council doing to challenge further the targeted enforcement activities of the police to deal with the numerous illegal high-powered e-bikes still plaguing our communities, and especially those delivery riders using such bikes and causing annoyance and danger to shoppers in areas such as High Street in the city centre? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Hartnack for this question. I will answer this question despite the fact that it was answered at length at the North Area Committee last Thursday when Councillor Hartnack had the opportunity to question Neighbourhood Inspector Christopher Eccleston directly. However, for the purpose of this meeting, I will say that the Council, in partnership with Northumbria Police...
On what rail? On what row?
In submitted for council, Madam Mayor, they to be submitted before Area Committee was held, and this has been discussed with the officer concerned in any event. So, by way of clarification, that is a clarification point, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Council, in partnership with Northumbria Police, have set up a dedicated team to tackle motorcycle disorder, including the use of antisocial use of electric bikes and scooters in the city. In the last 12 months, the team have carried out 1,118 patrols, made 1,277 callbacks to members of the public who've reported motorcycle disorder, issued 66 community protection notices, seized 179 motorbikes and quad bikes, arrested 110 individuals, engaged with over 1,000 young people via school inputs. 2 days of action has been recently carried out in the city centre during this activity, with 9 electrically assisted paddle bikes seized, and additionally I can advise that further days of action are planned in the city centre over the next few months. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Supplementary, please, Madam Mayor. Yeah, thank you for that, and it's and as I say, good outcome for Northumbria Police and the work that the police have done so far. I think the specific question around this issue was the danger that's caused at High Street West and continues to be caused at High Street West, and what is she doing in order to actually pursue the activities of the police around that area. There are a number of residents that make contact through social media and elsewhere. And I think there's people probably around this chamber themselves that have been affected by the dangerous riding of high-powered electric bikes on High Street West. Madam Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the interests of time, I won't repeat my answer in full again because clearly has been answered. But in relation to what I'm personally doing, I've got the SAIL team positioned specifically in the city centre to address city centre issues on High Street West. I'm very happy. If you want to go and visit them, Councillor Hartnack, I will take you along myself and you can see that work in person because what they are doing is excellent, as these numbers demonstrate. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is solidarity with Ukraine, and the question comes from Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was very pleased to see that Sunderland was showing its solidarity with Ukraine last month by lighting up the landmarks in the colours of the country's national flag to mark 3 years from the start of the conflict. Residents and councillors continue to be shocked and saddened by the events in Ukraine and continue to stand with the people of Ukraine. Can the leader update the council on the current actions being taken to support Ukrainians in the city? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Who keeps turning these off? Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I would like to thank Councillor Curtis for his question and for everything he does personally to support the Ukrainian population of Sunderland. The Council are proud to provide a warm welcome and wraparound support for our Ukrainian guests to assist them to settle into life in Sunderland and the UK. We employ dedicated support workers who help them navigate schooling, healthcare, employment, language and the many other issues they face when they arrive in the UK. Children are offered school places and supported with integration. We have seen many Ukrainians settle quickly and many securing employment. All feel very much welcome at home here in Sunderland. As a council, we will continue to do this for the length of time they reside in Sunderland under the government's Home for Ukraine resettlement scheme. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is future of Ukraine, and the question comes from Councillor Dixon.
Thank you. Just for clarification, this is not a political question, and I haven't made any reference to any other political parties when making this question available tonight. The future of Ukraine is of massive importance to the people of the United Kingdom and beyond, including those in our own city of Sunderland. Would the Leader of the Council agree that if Sunderland is still determined to maintain its friendship agreement with Harbin in Communist China, a city that has very close links with Russia, the least we can do as a council is to create a similar relationship with a city in the Ukraine as a sign of our support for their ongoing struggle against an invading force? Thank you, Madam
Leader.
It's happened again. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank Councillor Dixon for his question. The future of Ukraine is incredibly important to us and all, and it's critical that agreement is reached to secure a lasting peace as soon as possible. As a city, Sunderland recognises the value of international engagement in the short, medium and long term, and has built international partnerships over the last 75 years, focusing the level and nature of activity with different partners at different times. There are currently no programme of activity between Sunderland and Harbin. While the work continues, it is appropriate for the focus in communities across Ukraine to be on the ongoing struggle against an invading force and on securing lasting peace. Sunderland stands ready to support the people of Ukraine in the most appropriate way when it becomes possible to rebuild and regenerate their communities in that country. Thank you.
Could an update be given as to the promised action by this council following a motion brought to the full council in 2020 by my colleague Councillor McDonough when concerns were raised about the violation of human rights in Communist China and Sunderland's close links to Harbin?
I thought the politics were stopping out this and I just sneaked in there in the supplementary. But absolutely, we can look at that. It's something, one of the first questions I asked when I became leader, but as I said, there isn't any current programme of activities with Harbin. But in the spirit of the supplementary, Madam Mayor, I'll just gently point out that we were encouraged as a country to extend friendship and become partners with China under the previous David Cameron government as part of the China reset. But as I say, there isn't any planned activity at the minute. But I'm more than happy to sit down with Councillor Dixon and talk through any of the specific concerns in relation to that specific friendship agreement.
Thank you. The next question is regarding Mountain Daisy, and the question has come from Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Following the recent sale and closure of the Mountain Daisy Public House on Hilton Road, can the leader reassure councillors, local residents and national public heritage campaigners that the Grade 2 important historic interiors are not unlawfully converted? Sorry, I've read that completely wrong. This Grade 2 listed pub will be protected from any damage to the nationally important historic interior or unlawful, God bless you all, conversion into another use at the hands of a developer. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks everybody else.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The building in question is privately owned and the council therefore has limited control over its future use. However, council officers have responded to concerns raised by councillors, have inspected the property and have spoken with the owners on the site who have confirmed there is no intention to change the existing use. The owner is fully aware that the building is listed and has been reminded that completion of any works to the building without listed building consent would be a criminal offence. Council officers will continue to monitor the property. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Supplementary, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for that assurance. Can I just ask also, can you give me any assurances with regard to the Grade 2 listed building, the Elephant Tea Rooms, which is currently on the market as a mixed property? My understanding of mixed property is that it could contain both living accommodation and business accommodation.
Councillor Duncan, the question was regarding the Mountain Daisy. This is a separate building.
I'm not allowed to speak.
Continue.
It was about a Grade 2 listed building. I was just seeking a clarification. Am I allowed to continue?
It is a different question because the bulk of the question was around the Mountain Daisy. Thank you. Thank you. Next question. Do you want to finish the question, then Councillor Duncan, then Councillor Johnson is replying?
I've just...
You might.
It's a mixed-use building. Obviously, we're concerned that, and people, and the amount of money that the council put into it, about 720,000 a few years ago, just to make sure that it didn't fall into any unsympathetic development, given its historic importance for the city. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Johnson.
Madam Mayor, just as a little reminder to Councillor Duncan, as a City Council we have a great, proud track record of preserving and restoring our city's historic heritage. This includes the Elephant Tea Rooms, the Doxford Gatehouse Arch, the Bishop Townscape Heritage Scheme, that we then aided restoration works not just on the Dunkerque and the Peacock, but also the Sunderland Empire. And shall I not mention what Councillor Beth Jones has already mentioned in terms of the F-pit, which is going to Cabinet tomorrow, which obviously the Lib Dems opposed, following the recent budget meeting that we had. So it's clear that obviously heritage is only important to the Lib Dems when it's in their wards. I have to also mention the fabulous sympathetic restoration works that took place at the Seaburn Tram Shelter and the investment that has helped bring to the seafront in terms of jobs and future opening hours that the Blacks Corner have been able to do. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Lib Dems who opposed this at the time. It was Councillor Hartnack and the Sunderland Conservatives who were against that restoration work. So, as I've previously mentioned, Madam Mayor, anything in terms of the future applications with the Grade 2 listed buildings would come into planning and would be a key decision making within that. And it's important that everyone realises that with a Labour-led council, we cherish our historic heritage right across the city, from the coast to Washington to the coalfields. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I'm sure the residents will be comforted.
Sorry, after the applause, but could I have some clarification what you said about Conservatives against the tram shelter? Because I was on the planning committee and I voted for it.
Madam Mayor, the Sunderland Conservatives Facebook page on the 4th of May 2021 clearly states the Sunderland Conservatives were against any proposed change of use to the Seaburn Tram Shelter. And commenting, Michael Hartnack, who was the Conservative candidate then for full award, said, "I fully support the campaign to stop current and future developments that will lead to a significant change of use of the tram shelter." If that doesn't say you're against something, I don't know what does, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Point of absolute clarification. As has already been mentioned there, that was a comment that was made in support of the Safe Seaburn campaign group prior to election, and I think it's absolutely out of order to actually raise that as an issue. I was not speaking on behalf of the Conservative Party, full stop.
Right, we will now move on to the next question around gambling. And the question comes from Councillor Elms.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is becoming increasingly recognised that gambling is a public health issue, with significant harms affecting more than just those who have an addiction. Can the leader please update me on what steps Sunderland City Council are taking to reduce gambling harms, and what more could the council do, particularly in preventing gambling advertisements through advertising policies?
Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I would like to sincerely thank Councillor Elms for raising this important issue with us this evening. The Council recognises that gambling harms go beyond individuals who gamble and can affect their families, communities and society as a whole. Over the past 2 years, to gain the clearest picture, the Council has completed a health needs assessment and engaged with residents. Recommendations from the health needs assessment and engagement report suggest the need to strengthen our local partnerships and create a network of professionals to reduce gambling-related harm. In June 2024, the Sunderland Gambling Prevention Network was formed, and since its formation, the Sunderland Gambling Prevention Network has worked with the North East Council on Addictions around the provision of support for individuals impacted by gambling-related harms. We've raised awareness of treatment pathways and support services in primary care through the GP Clinical Index, and with residents and social prescribing and our social prescribing platform, Links for Life. We've supported the formation and delivery of a local lived experienced forum, introduced gambling-specific screening questions into a number of local services, and developed a training module through Making Every Contact Count. We've contributed to the review of Sunderland's local gambling statement of principles, which now includes a public health approach to gambling, which seeks to reduce the risk of gambling and prevent gambling-related harm. The policy recognises the need to address the possible impact of gambling on individuals, their families and close associates, and the impact on the wider community. We've recommended to national consultations on the structure, distribution and governance of the statutory levy on gambling operators. We're committed and continuing to explore a wider council advertising policy to give guidance on the principles and procedures relating to any advertising carried out by Sunderland City Council. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is regarding car park between Hilton Road and Railway Road. And I believe the question has come from Councillor Potts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Labour bosses have been working up expensive plans to change parking arrangements in the streets around its new White Elephant car park on Farringdon Row. However, residents and businesses have been complaining for years about the lack of signage and restrictions in the nearby council-owned surface-level car park parking area between Hilton Road and Railway Row. Parking in this car park is now completely out of control, with cars parking on and driving over paths and grass. There have now been accidents, with residents slipping on the resulting mud and being injured. Will the Cabinet urgently look at addressing the lack of parking regulations in this location, as originally requested by Millfield's hard-working Lib Dem councillors?
Thank you. Councillor Leonard.
Thank you, Councillor Potts, for the question. And I'm not sure which Labour bosses that you are referring to, but Hadi Alexander, the Secretary of State for Transport, did visit Sunderland to see the innovative work that we're doing, but the visit was definitely not in relation to reworking local parking. The car park on Farringdon Row, far from being a white elephant, is a new award-winning multi-storey car park which forms a key part of the Riverside Sunderland regeneration, servicing the needs of our residents and businesses as this Labour Council will continue to attract investment, increase visitor numbers and transform the heart of the city. In terms of the vehicles parked on the council land at Hilton Road and Railway Row, officers are aware of the informal parking arrangements on the land at Railway Row and are currently in the process of looking into introducing suitable traffic regulations and physical measures to address the problem. This will help maintain road safety and improve access in the area. And I'm sure the officers will consult and keep the ward councillors updated.
Thank you. The next question is leader's statement, and the question comes from Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following the leader's statement, the fact is you're an opposition councillor. You're asking for information. We run this city and we'll disseminate information to the city at the appropriate time. Will he acknowledge the rights of councillors to access information as set out in the Local Government Act of 1972 and commit to ensuring that all publicly funded resources and roles within the council are at the service of the public, not at the service of the Labour Party?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I absolutely have no hesitation in confirming that council resources, including the services of those who are appointed to undertake roles and responsibilities within the council, should be applied towards council business and not for the purpose of benefiting any political party. I am also happy to confirm that services to the public is at the very heart of council business. That does not mean, however, that any member of the public, individual political group or individual member, including myself, has an unrestricted right of access to all the information held within the council. I am pleased to be given the opportunity, Madam Mayor, to clarify any of the misunderstanding of the point that I made at the last meeting. It's often said in the debate, and it might just be my Hendonian coming out, in is that sometimes it's not articulated in the best possible way. The point I was trying to make, Madam Mayor, in the heat of the debate was that there is a process to go through in terms of when information is ready. Some of the information I was trying to get across that the opposition are asking for is information that we as a cabinet ourselves haven't yet had this opportunity to consider, but absolutely fundamental to the principle is that information will be shared with the public and the city and elected members at the appropriate time, and I'm pleased to be given the opportunity to clarify that position, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome his conversion to his new position, and I wonder if in that spirit, can I ask him, based on what he's just said, to explain why, when he held a meeting at Richard Avenue Primary School in his capacity as leader of the council, he only invited the Labour members for the ward to that, and when a member of the public alerted me to this, I emailed him to ask if I could come, and he didn't reply to me. It was subsequently said that this was a meeting because the other two Labour councillors are governors of the school, so I pursued this with the governors and was told it was a meeting of ward councillors.
Absolutely happy to clarify, Madam Mayor. I was invited at the behest of the Barnes Labour councillors. I've undertook a number of visits across the city with my colleagues, and I'm happy to continue to do so. It's important for me to get out across the city and speak to members about the issues in their ward, and I'll absolutely continue to go out with my group to hear the issues that they have and see if there's any way I can help. Thank you.
Point of order, Mayor Sunderland. Thank you. I just want to raise a point of order. This is under 15.15 about personal explanation, just because the leader's response in question was directed at me at the time. And in the spirit of clarification that Michael has offered, I wonder if he could also clarify, further on in that statement, he said, it's about time you started being treated like opposition. What did he mean by that?
This is not to be asking questions about what's just been read out. That's a supplementary. Okay. Okay, so then we will now call... Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a serious point of clarification. Earlier in the meeting, Councillor Butler referred to emails not responded to. I now have a copy of that original email and can see that there were not one but two replies sent. I'm happy to give those to him after the meeting, but would he withdraw the remark that no replies were sent? They're on record.
Point of personal clarification. 15.11. Councillor O'Brien, I nearly forgot his name because he's quite insignificant, has just said lies.
Madam Mayor.
Raising point of clarification, a point of order.
I'm raising a point of clarification because I was led to believe that you meant to treat members with respect. I've not once criticised your well-being or your whatever that you're trying to criticise me over. My significance is my massive mandate. That's why I'm here. I've got over 1,000. I've got a huge mandate, 1,000 actually. I have every right and every significance in this chamber as of any member. I don't care what Michael Mordy says or anything. Madam Mayor, are you going to let someone? Are you going to let him talk to members like that?
Will you please not shout across the
Are
chamber?
you going to let members talk like that?
You want a point of order. You want a point of clarification. Sorry.
Are you going to?
Have you raised the point of clarification?
What's the rule?
You've raised the point of clarification.
15.15. You have to treat members with respect. Are you going to allow that to happen?
Can you please sit down? Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'll get back to the point of personal clarification. He was sitting there and he shouted lies. So I'd like him to retract that statement, please.
Okay.
No, I think you've missed the point.
No. We will now move on to the next order of business. I now call upon the Leader to move the report and the supplementary report of the Human Resources Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I so move.
Deputy Leader, do you second the report?
I second the report, Madam Mayor.
Leader, would you like to speak to the report?
I would, absolutely. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll just find my agenda. Madam Mayor, the HR Committee, the Council are required by law to publish an annual peer policy statement. The statement is a matter of fact and includes the required information as set out in Section 38 of the Localism Act 2011. Some of the information included in the statement is as follows: the methods by which salaries of all employees are determined, the detail and level of remuneration of the Council's most senior staff, i.e. chief officers, as defined by the relevant legislation, the remuneration of the lowest paid employees, and the relationship between the remuneration of its chief officers and the remuneration of the employees who are not chief officers. Madam Mayor, the HR Committee considered and cross-party unanimously approved the publication of the peer policy statement, subject to full Council agreement today, and members are invited to consider the statement and agree to publication in line with the current legislation. Thank you very much.
Deputy Leader, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got nothing more to add to the Leader's comments.
Thank you. If anyone wishes to speak, please raise your hand and state whether you have an amendment, comment or question.
Madam Mayor, we've received prior notice from Councillor Hartnack and Mullen.
Okay, Councillor Hartnack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and it is a comment. And thank you for the opportunity to respond to this report, a report which is a virtual copy and paste from last year's pay policy statement. I am determined to raise concerns surrounding the contents of this report, as my conscience as a councillor forces me to do no other. The council taxpayers of this city deserve to rely on elected representatives to do and be seen to do the right thing on their behalf. I refer to pages 34 and 35 of the council papers relating to senior management pay and market supplements in particular. For starters, let me assure you that this is not a political statement. I would hope that all members of this chamber can rally round the point that I will be making to hopefully eradicate the current method whereby the Chief Executive is the sole arbiter of determining senior officer additional pay through supplements, market supplements in particular. Sunderland Council has been criticised in recent years for the excessive salaries paid to our executive officers. If senior political leaders determine the salary point of senior officers, then how on earth can it be possible for the Chief Executive to have delegated authority with little, if any, scrutiny or accountability to pay his closest senior colleagues an extra £12,000 a year on top of their already high salaries in excess of £150,000 a year? These payments have been going on for over 8 years now, and such are the generosity of such payments. They are both pensionable and rise with the annual pay awards and fail to be subject of any additional performance targets. The financial impact of those awards lasts far longer than merely the years in which they are awarded. They last for the life and beyond, in many instances, through increased pension payments of already gold-plated final salary pension arrangements. In other words, these additional payments have a significant impact over many years for taxpayers. Bizarrely, the current arrangements have the newly appointed Deputy Chief Executive, arguably the second most senior executive officer within the Council, on a salary which is less than those he is required to lead. And Madam Mayor, and this is an important point, we have multiple vacancies in junior posts like enforcement officers, school crossing patrols, and others who make a real impact on services to the public, which year by year go unfilled. Surely, if market premium payments are required to attract and retain key staff, then such payments should be targeted towards key workers at the customer interface of our organisation, as opposed to allowing the Chief Executive to appear to slavishly increase leadership costs without any transparent reason to do so. I note from the report that all current market supplements are under review. They were last year also, and no doubt will be next year again. My question to the leader, therefore, is when are you going to provide some tangible leadership and hold the Chief Executive to account for this policy? Or are you going to simply acquiesce and allow council taxpayers' hard-earned contribution to this city to continue to be wasted unnecessarily? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Amanda. It is just a brief one. It was easy to wonder what we would do when John Ritchie left, but Paul Wilson stepped into that job with excellence and has been incredibly supportive to councillors, is clearly very knowledgeable in all that he does. When he appears before scrutiny, he answers questions very diligently and thoroughly. And on top of that, is just a very nice person. So I warmly welcome his appointment to Deputy Chief Executive and congratulate him. And we wouldn't oppose if his peer was to go in the other direction to what Michael has just been indicating.
Thank you. Leader, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
I would. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Well, I just would first of all concur with Councillor Mullen in terms of Paul Wilson. I think he's absolutely a brilliant officer who does fantastic service to the City Council and to the City, despite the football team that he supports. But we'll just brush past that one. But in terms of Councillor Hartnack, it was interesting because he said it was just a statement, but then slipped a few questions in the end. But I'll try and nip through them as quickly as I can, jotting down what he said. In terms of council taxpayers, I think the council taxpayers of Sunderland get great value for service from this council. Again, we implemented the lowest increase in council tax of any North East council, and Councillor Smith was recently interviewed on Tyne Tees television, confirming that despite having a low council tax, the lowest council tax, we still provide absolutely fantastic services to the residents of this city, and that is in large part because of the whole workforce approach we take. We will be in this chamber on Friday recognising the absolutely amazing contribution our staff make into the efficient running of the council, and that is from the most senior managers down to the most junior employees. Everyone in this council plays a fantastic part in delivering the services. In terms of the Chief Exec's role, he is absolutely the head of paid service. It's up to him to recommend to HR committee what he believes is the most appropriate level of remuneration for the staff that we have. I understand that there has been criticism of our senior officer pay in the past. If I recall, I think it was from the Taxpayers Alliance, the murky body who often refuses to disclose who their funders are. But absolutely, the senior officers of this council provide a valuable service to the city. In terms of the remuneration that comes, we've just made a series of changes to senior positions in the council as part of the Future Councils programme. And as part of that, we removed a number of market supplements from some of the posts. But in terms of the remuneration, yes, it is recommended by the Chief Executive, but it absolutely is agreed for senior posts, Chief Officer and Deputy Chief Officers, by the HR Committee. and you have representatives on that. We've just literally had a HR committee just gone where we determined the salary for some of these officers, and Councillor Eyre was there and agreed the supplement. So I would just have a word with the officers and get a better understanding of how the HR committee works. Have a conversation with your colleagues, because we literally had a HR committee last week where we looked at a number of senior posts as part of the Future Councils programme, where the salary and the remuneration was debated and discussed and agreed cross-party, unanimous, Labour, Lib Dem and Tory members. But in terms of performance pay, Madam Mayor, I would absolutely say, in my humble opinion, the officers are performing fantastic. We just have to look around us in this building of the absolutely fantastic regeneration that's currently underway. That is in large part down to the exceptional senior leadership we have in this team. And if you want the best, you absolutely have to pay the best. Absolutely. I'm confident that we have the right remuneration packages to attract the right level of officers to help us, for them to help us deliver the ambition and the regeneration plans that we have in the city. So I'm absolutely confident that this report that comes every year, it's a requirement that sets out the pay and policy. We're also looking at the gender pay gap. We had a very discussion about that, how we're trying to consolidate and remove that, how we want to increase the lowest level paid in the organisation. Obviously, we've got changes to the national minimum wage that filters through, but absolutely, I believe, fundamentally, to my core, that we have the right levels of packages to enable the Chief Executive to attract the top-tier candidates to come and help us deliver for Sunderland. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Point of Point of clarification, Madam Mayor, 15.1. I was on the Personnel HR Committee last year, and a decision was made to actually delegate the sole responsibility, not to report back or to seek the consultation with the HR Committee for approval, but that sole delegation was provided to the Chief Executive in relation to market supplements for senior leaders within the organisation. Are you saying, Michael, that that process has now changed and that now comes as a recommendation and the HR Committee approve it on the advice of the Chief Exec? Because if that is the case, it has changed from last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wasn't on the HR committee last year. All I can comment on the process that we've went through in the, what's it now, 10 months I've been chair of the HR committee. We've had a number of reports come. The market supplements, again, as we've changed through the Future Councils programme, have been removed as we've regraded, rebanded. But absolutely, we had the meeting of the HR committee last week where we were looking at salaries of some of the senior officers. That was included. We had a full discussion as a committee, and we signed off the recommendations from the Chief Executive. So I'm comfortable with the arrangements that we have. As I say, I think they are the most appropriate. They give members, cross-party, members of the HR committee, input and say. But ultimately, as head of paid service, it's up for the Chief Executive to recommend to elected members what he believes is the most appropriate remuneration package. So, as I say again, for us to ensure that we can attract the top-tier officers to help lead the organisation. It's very important to us as a Labour group that we have the best officers working for us. I believe in Patrick and the Chief Officer Group, we absolutely have that in place, and we will do all we can as a Labour group and as a Cabinet and as a Council to ensure that continues in the future, because ultimately, if we don't, it's the people of Sunderland that will suffer by having less able people in senior posts to drive forward the absolutely once-in-a-generation, life-changing regeneration that we're seeing in the City of Sunderland currently. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you accept the report of the Human Resources Committee?
Thank you. Could the officer open the vote, please?
Yes. Junior says yes.
And if the vote could be closed now, please. There are 51 votes in favour, 6 against, and therefore the report is accepted.
Thank you. Next is a report on action of petitions. Does any member wish to comment on the report? Can we ask... Oh, Leader?
So, Madam Mayor, the Leader and Councillor Walton wish to comment.
Thank you. Leader?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, it's just a request. Really, we had a discussion at our group on Monday night about the number of outstanding petitions that are there. So again, I have emailed in, but I just wanted to put on public record that the Labour group will be keen to know how many petitions that have been submitted are currently outstanding and the length of time they have been outstanding. So I've just wanted to put that on public record. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Sorry, 15.6.1F. I asked that question a couple of weeks ago and I was ruled out of order for asking the question. Now, out of all respect, Michael, I agree with you asking it. I'm just wondering, what's the difference?
Madam Mayor, through you, I haven't said anything. I haven't spoken. Nobody's raised a point of order and neither I nor you have spoken.
I apologise. I raised that we were eager to get updates on petitions, and you'll recall I had 3 outstanding at the time, and you kindly chased up updates, but I asked if we had some sort of update, and I was ruled out of order on that occasion to say that I shouldn't be raising it and should raise it with you directly. The leaders very rightfully raised it today. I agree, and the Labour group have these concerns. I want to understand what's the difference while I was out of order, the leader isn't.
I can't remember the context.
I'm sorry, I don't recall the detail at all of that. All I would say is nobody has raised a point of order at this moment about the leader's comment, and so the Mayor has made no ruling. I don't think there's anything more I can say.
Councillor Walton?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just speaking in terms of the petition regarding Whitburn Road, which I presented, and the response. So hopefully this is the right point to just make a comment for the record. Obviously, thanking the council officers for their assessment of our petition and fully taking on board the practical issues. And really, just for the record to say, because we still receive concerns from residents about the difficulties crossing at that point, myself and I'm sure the other ward councillors will want to explore any other options that might be available. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. The next item tonight is a report of the Leader on special urgency decisions. Leader, would you please move the report?
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, do you second the report?
I second the report, Madam Mayor.
Does the Council agree to receive the report? Conscious of time now, we still have 3 motions to go through. Unfortunately, they will need to be carried over to the next meeting. Thank you. That concludes this evening's meeting.